Hey everyone, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. Before we go any further, just do us a massive favour and hit that subscribe or follow button in front of you. It's a key performance indicator for the podcast and it really helps us measure success of every single episode.
When people ask you and say, oh, who do you work for? And if you say Rosenbauer, they don't necessarily know, if they're not within the sector, who Rosenbauer is, but they only have to Google it and then they go, wow, what? That's not what I expected.
I think its success is based not only on what the product is and its continuous improvement, which has been considerable, is actually the fact that people like to deal with us.
It's the pride you can take in what you're doing. You know, we're not trying to flog a dead horse here. We're not trying to sell something that people don't really need.
You need to improve, you need to innovate, you need to move on. We're not just about sell it, walk away. It's more than that. It's a relationship. And I think that, if I had to say, that's the root cause of our success.
This is the second of our two-part episode with Rosenbauer. As a quick recap, Rosenbauer UK is the sales and service contact for Rosenbauer on the UK shores and enabling direct supply to the UK's fire and rescue services with municipal and industrial fire appliances, aerials and firefighting equipment. The company is based in Holmfirth, West Yorkshire, which sits in close proximity to Manchester. The Rosenbauer Group is one of the largest manufacturers of fire service vehicles and firefighting equipment in the world. Rosenbauer supplies the firefighting sector in over 100 countries. With a wide range of custom fire and rescue apparatus and services, it introduces its extensive series of firefighting vehicles and aerials in 3 continents to both European and US standards. The group is the world's largest firefighting technology provider. The listed family company is the 6th generation and has served fire departments for more than 150 years with a strong customer focus, innovative strength and reliability are Rosenbauer's key assets. So as a recap, today I'm welcoming back Nick Uwins, Managing Director of Rosenbauer UK Limited, and Andrew Smith, Business Development Manager of Fire and Rescue Equipment at Rosenbauer, to discuss how it all started and also a glimpse into the future of Rosenbauer and how they are solving the challenges of the modern fire service. Nick, Andrew, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How are we doing, fellas? All right?
Yeah, good.
Thank you so much for welcoming us to your facility. We've had an incredible look round everything, and I say everything. You know, some of the things we've looked at today, we haven't had a chance to look at some of the PPVs, some of the massive stuff you're doing in the PPE market. But I wanted to start with yourself, Nick. You've overwhelmed us with your knowledge of the appliances down there. But when did you first come to Rosenbauer, and sort of what attracted you to the industry itself?
So I started with Rosenbauer in January 2016, and I actually had to double check that actually because the time has disappeared very quickly. And you go, oh, how long has it been really? It's been that long. And considering I was in my previous job for 26 years, it's quite a thing. And it came about through a conversation I had with the previous managing director and a guy, one of the Rosenbauer guys from Austria, at an exhibition, and said, do you fancy it?
Have you ever thought about
it? And you give it a bit more thought and you go, yeah, I do actually. Yeah. At this moment in my life, I think that's it's a good challenge. And Rosenbauer being Rosenbauer, you go, yeah, I'll give that a crack. You know?
It's one of the real behemoths in the industry. But you have not come out of nowhere, you know, before. And again, as is alluded to with the knowledge you demonstrate downstairs, you originally came back in your apprentice days of working on the original Genesis. So you're not a stranger to the world. It's not like you've been brought in from whatever Marks and Spencer's, you know, as a managing director there. You've got a real history within it as well.
I do. When I left school, I have to say that, you know, unconvincing at school, uninspired by school actually, and not until I left school and was an apprentice at Dennis.
What did you want to do when you were at school? Sorry,
I don't know what I wanted to do at school. I think I'm one of those that goes, you don't know what did I want to do at school? Play football, I think, actually, was what I wanted to do at school.
Anybody really? I mean, I think you got children, haven't you, Nick?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I've got 3 children, and Andrew, you've got 2 young children now as well. Yeah. Do people still do those questions? Because my oldest is 21, Archie's 15, and Lily's 9. I don't ask them what they want. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm really enjoying what I do now, but certainly when you think of a business concept, it's hard to know what the end goal is. You're kind of focusing on the here and now, and
I think it's quite difficult. My experience with my children are older, and they had choices to make. I think probably more than what certainly I had when I was at school. And you get a choice. What was the thing I enjoyed about school the most? I could say, apart from playing football, was woodwork, metalwork and technical drawing. It's my sort of the sum total of my O levels is, you know, those practical practical skills that you go. And then consequently, when I was an apprentice, I had a choice of apprenticeships in the local area because there were engineering businesses. That's what I wanted to do. And I picked the one at Dennis's. Actually, why did I pick that one? Actually, because it was 200 yards from where I lived. And then I was a coach builder apprentice. So if you looked at my apprenticeship papers, it says coach builder, and we were carpenters because fire engines were made of wood.
Oh, geez.
So I jokingly said to you earlier, about I have actually worked on fire engines with wheeled escapes, and actually it wasn't a joke because I have. And because
you said there's somebody now, they would think like you said, they would think you're joking.
Yeah, you are really that old. Yeah. And so I did work on those. But when you're doing your apprenticeship, they had, and I certainly did it anyway, was move around the company in those 4 years. Don't upset anybody, as you'll end up in the fiberglass department.
I was literally having this conversation with my youngest son the other day, and it's a great thing to ask you, given the position you're in now. Apprenticeships. So apprenticeships were very big when we were younger, certainly when I was younger, and obviously you did one yourself. Then they kind of fizzled out. We didn't see them for a decade and a half, 15, 20 years. Now they're coming back with a vengeance. There's some people think, it's cheap labour, it's not good, it's not fair, people should get paid a fair price. But I think there's a tremendous amount of value that I think we kind of threw the baby out of the bathwater when we stopped doing apprenticeships, because people then they weren't picking up these practical skill sets as easily, and they were off getting degrees and qualifications, but they weren't building those functional skills. And then we found ourselves, and you'll know far better than me, in a position in the UK market where we didn't have a fantastically skilled labour force like we used to, and now those skill sets, and you alluded to it earlier when you said about the people you see in the sector, how many of them have actually come from a grassroots level like yourself, very few and far between. Do you still use apprenticeships in Rosenbauer now? Is it a popular thing? Because we're seeing them in the emergency services.
At Rosenbauer UK, we don't have an apprentice. We're a small company, but do we want to have an apprentice? I would say yes, definitely we do. Do we want to treat them as apprentices get treated in this country? No, not completely.
That's why
because it's not cheap labour, actually. No, you have to be serious about it, and you have to want to invest in that person or persons to treat them correctly. It's not a means of paying them below minimum wage to get another pair of hands. Absolutely. If that's your intention, don't do it. And I know from experience, where apprenticeship is taken up, and that's exactly what happens. And I had to subsidise my eldest son's apprenticeship, what he did, because he literally couldn't afford to get there on the money they've been paid. So no,
but you clearly saw there's value in it. Otherwise, you
absolutely value in it. Absolute value in it. 100%. So come out the end of it, and it's all good. Rosenbauer as a whole has a lot of apprentices.
Okay.
And from all walks of life, and we see it, on the newsletters and stuff. Go, here's our latest influx of thing, and you'll see 10, 20, but they're across all the company. So it's large companies, particularly the Austrian places, the factories, where there's 1,000 people working at each place, and you've got the selected apprentices in finance, admin, engineering. The apprenticeship's not just for people with some spanners. Yeah. It's for people, because Rosenbauer at Plant 1 particularly has a machine shop. Mm-hmm. So there'll be people that are doing machining. It's got a very large computer-controlled machine shop, and one thing and another. So the apprenticeships are a lifeblood into those companies, because they're so large, and you have to grow that. You grow your talent to get people from outside is very difficult. Some
people are reluctant investing too heavily, especially when we see people jumping from business to business, dropping and changing sectors that they work in. But I always say, yes, you might train people and then they leave, but what's worse is if you don't train them and they stay. Surely you'd rather invest in people and risk losing them rather than having a workforce that you never invested in.
Yeah, I think you're right. I take some pride in my previous job, and it was a decision that we took as the company to get apprentices. And did we have a number of failures in that group of apprentices? Yes, absolutely, we did. How much pride have I got in the ones that succeeded? I got a high amount of pride actually in that. And did they leave after their apprenticeship? Yes, they did, because they moved on to something different, although they think, but they had the get up and go in there, and you go, do you know what? I've played a part in that young person's life to bring them to this state, and then they move on and they do something else, and you pat them on the back and you go, great job.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the speaker there, Andrew, saying about, when we were younger, I'm sure it was the same for yourself, there was a limited number of professions that people could perhaps get involved with. We speak about what do you want to be when you grow up. Now you could do a million and one things. You could make tables, you could run a podcast, you could be in the emergency services, you could do so many different things. Just some of your background obviously comes from sales, and marketing and stuff is a big part of what you do now. That could exist in any sector. Any sector needs sales. It's the lifeblood. I always say to people, life is sales. Why do you choose to use your skill sets in a sector like this, for a company like Rosenbauer, why be here when you could be a million different places doing what you do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. For me, I always wanted to do sales. It was always a thing I wanted to do. And
some people hate it. It's scary. I love it, but it's scary.
You tell people about sales, and there's a lot of misconceptions about KPIs and targets and things like this. And the way I look at it is, look, the postman has a target. He has to deliver so many letters in a certain amount of time. The person in a till, WH Smith, has to sell an extra piece of chocolate.
Yeah.
The whole thing's sales, and people they get scared of being in a sales role when actually you're targeted for everything. So for me, it was from a very early age. The school in sixth form I went to was very much focused on Oxbridge and who was going there and whatever. So when I had my first part-time job and I was earning money, a couple of quid an hour, but it was money for a 16-year-old. But then I was getting commission on top of it. I'm like, hang on a minute, you're telling me to do a job and I get extra money just for doing it well.
Yeah.
Like, this is just great. So for me, I ended up going to university doing history and politics for the transferable skills that you can take from that and then take into a sales environment. And then to get to here today at Rosenbauer, it was sort of a... If you'd have told me when I finished university and said you're going to end up working for a global fire engine manufacturer, I'd have... How on earth is... Is a path that sort of evolved quite naturally from step to step, where I had to look at where I was at each stage of my life. And I started off doing oil and gas recruitment, and it was a very, very cutthroat environment for doing sales. And it was a lot of chewing the phone off, just harassing people on the phone to try and do it. And for me, I was like, well, okay, I'd rather be out there, a bit more consultative style of selling. So the only company that would take me was Rent-A-Kill. So, they give me a car and it was like, come and sell pest control. And it was interesting, but whatever, it was a means to an end. I did that for a bit. And then I finally got a job in the hire industry doing cherry pickers and working platforms. That role grew and took on more responsibility, and then an opportunity come to work for a German pump manufacturer. So I really found a bit of a home there in pumps and pumping technology, and taking a consultative approach to sales and working with the customers. It was just one day I seen a job advert for Rosenbauer, and having worked for a German pump manufacturer that did a sort of 360 offering, and then I seen Rosenbauer, and okay, it's essentially an Austrian pump manufacturer on a bigger scale, more pedigree behind it. It was like, well, yeah, why not? Why not throw my hat in the ring? Met Nick, and
you said as well downstairs about how we talk about bringing your son to work day, and the different level of authenticity that comes from you serving a different end user. At the end of that, I never like to pick on them. Not that I think they'll remotely care or even listen to the podcast, but we're not selling straws for McDonald's. Do you know what I mean? There's a difference reward metric when you say that consultative side of it and the work you do with the end user. Well, the end user here is frontline operators, whether it be fire service, police, paramedics, whatever the frontline operator may be. It has a different coming to work on a Monday feel when you know the people you're going out to serve are serving the community, I suppose.
It's funny when you say about... So I've got two boys. My eldest is 4, my youngest is 2. My eldest is 4, and he's at his preschool now. They start talking about, what would your parents do, and what do you want to be when you're older? And if you ask him now already, what do you want to be when you're older? I want to sell fire engines, Daddy.
Love it.
That's it. I mean, I'm sure if I was doing something else,
there's not as many toy shops as fun as these ones. That's for sure.
But it's even that side of it, that it's the pride you can take in what you're doing. We're not trying to flog a dead horse here. We're not trying to sell something that people don't really need.
No.
This is saving.
Or that they begrudge having.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit like if you have to make something like buying insurance, you'll be like, oh God, or like gas and electric. You're like, yeah, we need it. I hate you. I don't like that I've got to pay for it, but exactly. I get it, and you've got me by the short and curly, so I'm going to have to do it. Whereas this, it's a fun problem to solve, isn't it? Some of the problems, challenges that you guys are facing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's when people ask you and say, "Oh, who do you work for?" and if you say Rosenbauer, they don't necessarily know, if they're not within the sector, who Rosenbauer is, but they only have to Google it, and then they go, "Wow, what? That's not what I expected." There's a lot of people, and they go, "What do you do?" I'm an accountant, or I work for a law firm, or do this, or do an office job, or something like that. And even for us this morning, when we walk around the workshop here, and
You have a big old smile on your face, don't you? Yeah, James, honestly. And I used to think this. I've been in the emergency services for about 15 years now. People say, oh, mate, wait till you've been in for 5 years, be bored of it. And then they say, wait till you've been in for 10 years, be bored of it. They're still saying it to me now. So I think it's a difference in the type of person that is attracted to the job. You know, a lot of people come to the emergency services to make a living. I like to think that the people I work with, and hopefully I include myself in that, are people that actually come to make a difference, not just make a living. Because you find it's so much easier to turn up on a Monday or turn up for a night shift when you know the job that you're doing has a different purpose to it.
I think, you know, in a sales role, to be perfectly honest, you could probably earn a lot more money in a completely different market. Yeah, you know, when I did recruitment, you know, it was incredibly lucrative, but was proud of it.
Got soul destroying as well. Yeah, I've worked in some sectors like that with the greatest of respect, and it's harder. That's what made me want to leave. You know, about a 12 grand pay drop to come across and join the fire service, but I'd done all those skill sets we were talking to downstairs in a fast-moving consumer goods company, and thought, God, imagine if you applied some of this thinking to a much more interesting problem. It has a greater level of appeal to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, as I said, was I proud of what I was doing? I was proud of the paycheck, yeah, for sure. Was I really, you know, was I proud of what I was doing? Was this going to be no? Whereas, you know, I can come down to my home office and turn my computer on, my wallpaper on it's one of the RTs, and you just look at it and you're like,
it's cool.
Yeah.
You never outgrow that, do you?
When my little boy's at the door and he looks at it and he's like, oh, daddy, and you're like, yeah, that's...
Well, we look forward to meeting him. We were saying to James, you know, we're going to see them at the British Firefighter Challenge this year. It's a quick update from one of our partners, and we'll be right back to the show. Today's episode was brought to you by our partner, William Wood Watches. Now, in support of the Firefighters charity, William Wood Watches, who are the makers of those beautiful luxury watches from upcycled firefighting equipment, are bringing you the always ready motorcycle. It's super essential to make you aware of this one, folks, because there are only 300 tickets available. William Wood Watches have partnered with the talented Sultan Motorcycles, and they're bringing you the first William Wood Watches motorcycle. This is incorporating the workings of all of their watches and adorned with multiple elements of upcycled firefighting materials. This is a one-off motorcycle, and it's like nothing you've ever seen before. It can only be won if you're in the prize draw. You can enter the prize draw if you follow the link in the post below this episode. All profits raised from the sale of the always ready motorbike will be donated to the Firefighters charity in the UK, supporting firefighters and their families. Not only does making a purchase from William Wood Watches mean you will get your hands on one of those beautiful and authentic luxury pieces of firefighting nostalgia, but you will be supporting this effort and giving a donation to the people that operate in our sector. Now back to the show. We were speaking about many of the ranges of products and stuff that we've seen here, and some of the innovations that are going on. We spoke a little bit, off microphone about some of the exciting things that you're doing. For a lot of people in the sector, if they're new to it, they may just know about Rosenbauer and think about the helmets. Ironically, in the room we're sat in now, there's two gorgeous helmets sat on the windowsill over there. We are eyeing them up for the British Firefighter Challenge, so don't be surprised if one of them doesn't make it through the meeting. It's not all about the helmets, but I do want to double click on how Rosenbauer seems to be just has identity attached to that to a certain extent with the Heroes models. And why has that been such a case, Nick? Why has it been such a pivotal point in the market that when people think of helmets, Rosenbauer seems to be synonymous with it?
I'd have to give credit to this company as it was before, which was Northfire. Yeah. An awful lot of effort into that bubble was actually put in, and it's credit where credit is due, that's for sure, and opened up that particular market. But the origins of the Rosenbauer helmet, if you go back to the guys at the company in Austria who saw that that's something that they should be doing, and through every effort, as they do now with all their other products, put money into that belief that this was a part of the market that they wanted to be a part of, and as the company always wants to do with everything, is do it properly. And so the helmet became available, the Rosenbauer helmet, and as I said to you earlier, I think its success is based not only on what the product is in its continuous improvement, which has been considerable, is actually the fact that people like to deal with us. So it's a great product that's been developed. People do like it. They see from the older style to the new one, the changes that have been made, and now much more comfortable it is. And we've listened to what people have said, and that's worldwide. It's not just in this country, but it's been because they want to deal with us as a company because we're a friendly face. Yeah. We have good products, and we support the customer. So regardless of its route to market, we're not just about sell it, walk away.
Yes.
It's more than that. It's a relationship. And I think that if I had to say, that's the root cause of our success thus far with that particular product.
I think with certain products and certain people, even in this sector, some can hide behind what they do and hope they'll be forgiven for who they are, despite of what they do. But like you say, you've got a big after-sales department here, and the specificity and individual care that goes into some of the work you do, and some that I've experienced personally, even with my own service, is a real game changer. And probably for people new to the industry or new to some of the things we're going to discuss today, making that decision at the beginning, you've got to think about the long journey this is going to take. This is not these aren't throwaway products. Certainly when we come to speak about some of the vehicles that we're looking at, we live in such a world now where you buy something on Amazon, you throw it away tomorrow. This stuff needs to work. A lot of it is going to be closely related. Somebody will be relying on it to save a life or to keep their own safe. So it's a very different purchase than buying office supplies.
It is. And if you're you're in a UK company, for instance, we're a subsidiary company of Rosenbauer AG. So we have that full support of the company. And from a worldwide point of view, so our service activities actually is probably bigger than people would start to think there is. So we've had guys recently, so we do have a big market in Ireland, particularly in aviation, so service contracts for vehicles in airports in Ireland, so it requires a little bit of travel. Where have our guys been recently? We've also got some trucks in Gibraltar, which is a contract we had, and we'll now have a contract with a Finnish airline or airports, I think it's 4 airports in Finland. We have that service contract, and we have some in Portugal as well. So do we just sit on the ground? No, service is very important to us. It is, it's a business, but it's a sustainable business, so it's a revenue stream.
Yeah. We had a very close friend of mine, Matt, Matt from Gibraltar, from the Firefighter Challenges. I said, coming to see Nick and the team today, and he sent a photo because there's Gibraltar's, everybody knows everybody in Gibraltar, the Rock of Gibraltar, and we're due to go over there and do some stuff with them, and I know they're bowled over in comparison because I think we're quite elitist in the UK, and we've been so used to the high calibre of equipment and the high calibre of services and the high calibre of people that we work with, we forget that in different areas of the world, they could never dream to have their communities looked after by some of the vehicles that we're looking at today. And Gibraltar, with the greatest of respect, I think this has been a big step up in comparison to some of the things they've had in the past.
It was a massive step up from what
so
they
that
had
with the
before.
respect of probably what came before.
Yeah, they had a lot of legacy MOD fleet.
They did, yeah.
In there, and then the decision was made about how the airport was actually run because it was a military site, really, with some passenger aircraft coming in and out of it, but it was the only point of getting in there. And then it's the change, and it was the purchase of the vehicles was subsidised by the MOD, but they basically belong to the government of Gibraltar. So from that respect, they have had a massive, great big step up, and quite rightly so. It's a busy place, but we do see that where people have got to step up from some of the legacy stuff. We've had some successes recently in Ireland with Panthers to airports because they were given government grants and decided to uprate their fleets because they want to develop that internal transport network to develop their country, don't they?
Absolutely. I want to continue down that sort of the rabbit hole with the vehicles that we've got. So on the website, we look at the sort of you feature a vehicle of a month, and I was trying to scroll through and trying to pick something favourite. The Panther keeps screaming to mind just because it's so iconic, and we spoke about some of the ones at Heathrow and some of the other places that you have them facilitated. But I want to cast our mind to way back to when you first started working on the Dennis's to some of the vehicles that we're seeing now. We saw some of the differences in the way that the cabs articulate, the demands for equipment. We spoke about compressed air foam systems. So many variations and demands for the customer in terms of them vehicles. What are some of the biggest challenges you have seen from where the vehicles were to where they are now, and what are some of the biggest things that Rosenbauer are working on to continue to serve the needs of an ever-changing, dynamic fire service that you see before you?
Yeah, you noticed I started laughing straight away.
Yeah.
Because I have seen...
And also, do people know what they want? This is a conversation we had earlier about what people think they want and what they really need.
What they think they want and what they really want, or what they need, actually. It's not necessarily the same thing. But in more recent times, particularly because of the pandemic, we've done so many more, and everybody will be able to relate to this, won't they? In that you're doing, here's another Teams meeting, do a presentation
Yeah.
I would have said that's become more common now that you do a presentation. Anyway, so some of the presentations you develop become different, and I did one in the last sort of 18 months or so. I develop them as I go, and one of my first slides is, this is what the fire service used to do by picture format, because I believe pictures tell 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
More difficult in this environment, but you start off, and so I've got a slide, and the first picture is of a horse-drawn fire engine. And then it progresses through the various stages of fire engines to our RT, so an electric fire engine. I like to say, what's the common denominator between those 8 things that are on that particular slide? Tell you what, they've all got wheels. Why have they got wheels? That's because they need to go somewhere. Who's reinvented the wheel? Well, it's a bit different, but actually it's still round.
Yeah.
Because the fire truck's still got to go where it's got to go. That also goes, and it's not just with the vehicles, but because fire service needs people, transport, communications. You take one of those away, then you're in a bit of bother, aren't you? So that communications, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, is turning to a digital format, as ring up 999, ding, ding, ring a bell and off you go. And what was the communication from the fire truck from there? It was non-existent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But of course it is now. So that whole host of changes that you see, and a number of those have been changed by legislation.
Okay.
So from a transport point of view, from a vehicle point of view, the challenges often become because technology changes and regulations change. So what's the most obvious one? Well, it's an environmental change because of diesel engines. So what's happened with those, So I joked to you earlier and said, there was a time if you broke down, you could operate the engine with your shoelaces.
Yeah.
Not a chance of doing that now. If it stops, it stops. That's it. Electronic control. So when electronic control for the engine came in, how do you control the pump? Well, you've got to do it electronically. And that threw up quite a lot of, you might think it's fairly simple, but at the point, everybody went, oh.
Well, not only that,
how do we do
from a
that?
boots on the ground perspective, convincing people to adopt that was very, very difficult.
Yeah,
very
absolutely. Yeah, and then we had that proliferation of people who said, I need a stick, or I need do I press it down to make the engine go faster? But it's a whole host of things that came with it. And then different materials. So from a electronic point of view, that was a lot of challenges. From a technical point of view, when the chassis started to change. And would you say those changes in legislation was the demise of the Dennis chassis? You'd probably have to say, yeah, it probably was, because their market share was low. It was a niche product.
Yeah.
Did they have the high volumes of the chassis manufacturers? No. And so it became more difficult, and their product costs went up.
Yeah.
And they couldn't compete with the likes of Volvo, and the Volvos, if you want to use those as an analogy.
It's quite sad though, because I remember driving some of the first Dennis's.
It is a bit sad.
And they're nice.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So when you've driven them...
Mind you, I learnt on them, so I appreciate I have a bias.
It is like that, and people do use those stories like people do, and I would say that, wouldn't I? Because having driven fire trucks myself, it's like, that's what you would say. So those challenges, and then because you then, like I said again, so when we were carpenters making fire engines out of wood, nobody think that's a great idea. Why would you do that? Doesn't wood catch fire? Well, it does actually. Yeah. So then what do you do then? And there was a proliferation of people making bodies from steel. That ended fairly quickly, because guess what? They all got wet and went rusty.
Yeah, very quick.
And very quickly. So then there was that move to different materials, and then so body structures, if you're just using the mechanics of it, has changed quite a bit in itself. So now we see it. Our material of choice is still aluminium. There's a good supply of it. It is recyclable and so on. There's a proliferation of fiberglass bodies that were introduced by, there was a company in Holland who produced fiberglass structures. Okay. And then that moved over to welding plastic together, which you see now, and that's just probably about to go full circle. So all those things, all but say, a fire engine, it's got some people at the front, and generally it's got a pump at the back, might be in the middle, and some lockers on the side, because as you said earlier, Pete, it's a toolbox. Yeah. What's the toolbox look like? How can I make this more efficient for the user? And then, of course, when I was first in the industry, we still said they were firemen. Well, we don't say that anymore, and haven't said it for some time. No. And so the diverse workforce comes into play, and you have to at some point...
Diverse workforce, but diverse job.
It's a diverse job, absolutely. So, yeah, and you have to
more so than it ever was back then. Where you could just get away with being, I'm just a pump man, or I'm just a nozzle person.
Yeah, and even your
now you need all skills.
Even your statutory requirement to go to fires. End of that story. Yeah. and then your role becomes much more involved in different types of incidents. They're sending us to some road traffic collision. Yeah. That becomes a different ball game entirely. And so your role, confined space rescues and everything that we know now, don't we? You know, but at the end of the day, so how do we develop our product to then take account of the next either legislation or our workforce or the incident types that we're going to? So like now we're seeing more heath fires.
Yeah.
It's March. It's only just stopped raining. It's probably going to rain again. But Scotland's just had one the other day, and we had one locally here a week ago. So what does that fire truck look like? You know, we see the benefits of having only one fire engine in our station, don't we?
Yeah.
You know, but does that fire engine still want to say the same? And it goes back to my original comment about my slide, because in that slide is the wheeled escape on there. Does that wheeled escape help you these days or anything with a heath fire? No, this was no use or ornament, is it really? And would you use it? So it's a different perspective at all on what this, and that's how it continues to develop. And so what's the next thing that's driving us is emissions and electricity and technology. So our new RT, which has been pretty successful with sales around the world, you know, is that next thing. And from our perspective as a company, it was interesting to understand the thought process behind the decision to do it in the first place. So when you reach a point in things, I often say there's a fork in the road, turn left to do this or turn right to do that. You can't go straight on because it'll stop you doing. There's a constraint up one of these roads. And so the company decided that they would build an electric fire truck from the ground upwards. What was the benefit of doing it, converting something? I think they'd learnt their lesson from the old Panthers that were built on someone else's chassis.
Okay.
And the inherent issues that then manifested themselves over time. So then the Panther came along, let's do this properly, engineer it, build it, you know, as a proper automotive engineering company, and that's the decision-making process for the RT, which is there something out there that's suitable to turn this into a fire track, or do we have to start again? Tell you what, let's start again. So from that
point, picking a property and trying to retrospectively adapt it and go, at a certain tipping point, you go, just build from the ground up. Rather than just trying to, you know, retrospectively change or adapt a building from what.
Yeah, why don't knock it down, do it again?
Knock it down, do it again. Because also, when you talk about people trying to knowing what problem they're trying to solve now, and with all these new technologies, people from the fire service have probably been indoctrinated into a service where it's hard for them because they're not outward facing like you. They're not exposed to all the technology. I think it was Henry Ford that said, you know, if I'd have asked farmers what they wanted, they'd want bigger, stronger horses. Nobody would have ever said combustion engine. So now when you're talking about electric vehicles, when you're talking about different ways to solve the same problem, and also, you know, we echo back to sales again, Andrew, how do you balance knowing what you think the end customer needs and not appearing to trying to steer them into what the company's decided to invest in? Because sometimes, you know, I mean, Nick, you said as well, sometimes you actively step away from things if you don't think you have the right solution for the customer. But Andrew, for some people, that's probably quite difficult to say no when you think, I want to try and solve every problem.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I've always taken a sort of a two ears, one mouth approach to whenever I have to sell anything, because
I'm terrible at that.
It's
listen to us as much as you speak.
But it's one of those ones where, you know, in this role, for example, when I was in Austria, the first question they ask, "Are you a firefighter?" No, I'm not. So, you know, when they're talking about the product, frustrating
start to the conversation.
Yeah, probably
you're going to start with a bias and treat me from here on. Okay,
yeah, you start thinking like, I kind of wish I was now, but yeah, fair enough.
Backpedal from this one.
Oh, yeah. What would happen if I did say, yeah, I am?
Would it matter?
But you know, when they say to you, yeah, are you a firefighter? No, I'm not. So, when I'm going and I'm seeing the brigades and I'm seeing the various different watches and taking the products to show to them, it's almost getting the feedback from them and listening to them and say, well, we're not here to say you have to have this pump because it's the best pump in the world and it has this feature, but listen to them and say, well, what is it? What boots have you got? What helmet have you got? What LPP are you using? What do you like? What do you not like? And then say, look, you know, this is what we've got to offer. What's your thoughts? What's your feedback? Because we can then give that back to the factory as well and say to the product managers who look after the lines and say, this is the feedback that we've had from the end user. So I think in this profession, we're supplying equipment that you and other firefighters, you've got to trust your life with some of this stuff. When we're talking about the helmets, for example, you're being asked to do something that's absolutely counterintuitive. You've got to run into that burning building and you've got to go and do something. And you've got to know that what you're wearing, what you're using, the equipment that you've got is fit for purpose. It's right, it's thought of, it's not just a product that's sold. So
otherwise it's like a parent pushing you out onto glass bridge and going, go on, just go, it's fine. And you're like, I don't think this is going to hold me.
Yeah.
I know you're telling me it is, and you've tried to bamboozle me with the data, but I don't have belief in it.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, when we're looking at the approach that we're trying to take to customers and to brigades, is to really listen to them and say, well, what is it you're using? What is it that you like about it? What is it that you don't like about it? Here's what we've got to offer. Test it, take it, try it, love it, hate it. Give us feedback. We'd rather, sometimes for me, if I give someone one of the things to test, if they turn around and said, oh, I don't really like it, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because the last thing you want to do, yeah, exactly, and the last thing you want to do is they end up with something that doesn't work for them, because they will find problems with it. And
because you can sit in this boardroom and fall prey to groupthink and just keep going, yeah, it's great, isn't it? No, it's great, isn't it, Andrew? Yeah, it's great. And then you go out there and they go, it's rubbish. Told you 2 years ago, don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't tell a firefighter how to do the job. They're far more qualified to do it, but I can show them the tools.
You said there, and maybe I don't want to fish for a distinction or a difference, but you said, value in the end user. We want to know what people think. We want to know what brigades think. Do you ever find a disparity between what a senior leadership team or what a person in acquisition that you may be engaging with, because you still obviously see a value in going to the fire station? I'm not saying that nobody's listening to somebody, but you might get one opinion from somebody that's not been operational for 15 years versus what are your personnel saying? What are the guys and girls on the fire engine saying? But also you don't want to undermine them by, there's a political minefield to navigate there. You sat in this boardroom, say you want this, but I've just been out to 4 of your fire stations and they're saying something different. And
so that's one of the approaches.
How do you balance that?
Yeah, so actually it's funny. That's one of the approaches that we took sort of as a new step forward when I joined the business. Is I've got a demo vehicle which is stocked full of demo equipment. So when I'm going to see a brigade or whatever, it could be that you're seeing a chief, procurement, and also guys down in the station on watch. So it's balancing that. Yes, there is sometimes differences, like I say, not with price, but price is, it's a fact of life.
The firefighter's going to want the nicest, sexiest thing you've got on the back of the
van.
I
think everyone would drive.
How much is that? Don't care.
I think we said before, everyone would drive around in the Panther, right?
Of course we would. Yeah.
Did, so
I need one. I need it.
But we've done where we've been quite active recently is we can go in and we can go and meet with a chief and say, look, or we can meet with a watch manager and say, look, this is what we've got to offer. But then also pulling the equipment down into one of the bays, getting it out and saying, look, you are the firefighters, and what do you think of this? And trying to see, rather than there's a top-down approach and there's a bottom-up approach to any other sales, and we're trying to find that balance into it, so that yes, you've not got the firefighters just wanting everything that's shiny, because of course you're always going to want the nice shiny stuff, and seeing, okay, is there a compromise between that, and say, well, yes, there's a certain degree of this is the equipment that you have to have because this is what we're procuring, but also trying to get them both sides to recognise the benefit to it. So there's that balance between the two. So the firefighter gets what he wants, the procurement people get what they want, and there's different
there's a spectrum.
Criteria.
Yeah.
You see it in the tender documents for sure. When
you also want to create a groundswell, because
yeah.
you could bamboozle somebody with data. We sort of said it before. You can go and research if you do work, in procurement. You can do all of your research yourself, and then you can go to your firefighters and go, we are going to get the best. If I were buying a TV tomorrow, I might do all the research and go, I'm going to get the Panasonic 360XY widescreen 52. And you're so excited to tell your mate who is the specialist in IT, and you tell him and he goes, no, mate, that's rubbish, get the Samsung. You know what I mean? It's like going down to the base and saying, oh, we found this fantastic product by X. And they go, no, man, get the Rosenbauer, it's better, or get the X, because they just know, or they've spoke to their friends. And immediately, no matter how much data you give them, if they've not been brought in and included in it and brought on board in the why process, they don't feel part of the solution. It feels like a tell rather than a sell. Do you know what I mean? I'm just do it because I've told you to. Just put it on. And you're like, okay, but I'm not going to look after it. I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to espouse the benefits of it because I don't feel included in the decision process.
Yeah, you can look at a spec sheet, right? And a spec sheet will tell you all the technical details. So if you take an LPP, you can read exactly, how many cc's the engine has, flow rates, pressures. You can read fuel consumptions. There's so much data you can get off a spec sheet or something like that, but to actually then give it to a firefighter and to say, hand prime that, have a go at hand priming it, or when they actually hear it or use it, and everyone always has a different approach to how they like to do business, and I think particularly in the fire and rescue world, I think that hands-on approach to consult with the brigades, to consult with the firefighters, to get them involved and to get that, I think is absolutely invaluable.
Well, we're kinesthetic people as well, we like to touch and pick things up and know how it works. And
that's
how a lot of people in our sector like to learn. You said yourself, you're head honcho on here, and you have a hands, I know how to use it, I want to tinker with it approach to things. You don't come from a spreadsheet background, Nick. You come from a hands-on, getting your greased up monkey hands in there.
No, I think it's one of those, and it's often if you see something that's been manufactured by someone, and there are things that you see and you look at them and you go, ooh, what's wrong with that? Because it's just, your perspective is, it's all wrong. And I'm in the, if it looks wrong, it is wrong. So there are things that you look at, and I think a number of I think the company pays quite a lot of high attention to detail. And so that when you see, like the vehicle design, for instance, some things people look at it and go, do you know what, there is added cost in this because it looks lovely, it doesn't need to be like that. Yeah. Well, it wouldn't look like that, would it? It'd look atrocious. Yeah. So, it's got to appeal to people. Yeah. So it's a bit like that in your private life. I know that has a cost, but it's still got to be appealing because you've got to be proud of the piece of equipment you're using, haven't you? And that's our job. And I always conscious, because of my background's really engineering, is that, don't be really boring, Nick, because you're just an engineer. Am I really hot on saying things that are not quite true by social media? No, don't do that, because often it is meaningless. But what I like to see from a marketing perspective is just our names out there with our products. I don't want to say something like, this is the best thing since sliced bread, this fire engine. Because what does that actually mean? Can you actually quantify that to the user? They actually eventually, someone wants to go, well, what does it do? Yeah. It looks lovely, and I know you said it's the best thing since sliced bread, but what does it actually do?
I think it's one of them, I always find it funny, because a couple of years ago I was at an airport, and they had, they have like a sports car in there. Yeah. And then it's like, do you want to win this car? Buy a ticket for £1 or £5 or whatever to win this car. And I said to the guy, it's no good, it's rubbish. Yeah. He's like, what do you mean it's rubbish? It's, it's BMW i9. He said, what have you got? I said, a Citroen C4 Picasso. He said, well, why is it rubbish? It's way better than what you got. Buy a ticket, you got a chance. And I was like, well, it's rubbish for me because I can't get any child seats in the back. Well, how can I get a pram in that? I don't want it. I don't want the car.
Anybody ever been and done those, like you say, drive sports cars for a day? And I said, God, I'd hate to drive one.
And he's there, a sales guy. He's just trying to say, all he wants to do is sell you a ticket because he's got a car, and he's trying to tell you how great it is off spec. Listen, it would be a great Sunday drive car. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to have it for that, but I can't do a weekly shop. I can't take the kids to nursery. And it's that style versus substance, right? And like what Nick was saying there, but I think when you guys were walking around the workshop earlier, and you see your eyes light up when you see some of the finer details that are in it, it's a toolbox, the fire appliance.
I see the same with so many things. I see the same with clothing, with other things. You've seen the film I Am Legend with Will Smith, and there's a value thing where people say, if nobody was here anymore, would the thing you think has value still have value? So we use the example of a really nice car. And I always said the Ford Ranger that we have was my end of the world car, because even if I could drive a Ferrari every day, if everyone had gone and I could just go and pick up the keys and drive them out the showroom, I wouldn't have it, in honesty. It's not functional for me. A lot of the clothing that I wear, it's not a really expensive suit, but it feels good, it does the job, and I feel like I can take over the world when I'm doing it. It might not be the nicest or the nicest, but it's functional, and like you say, it depends what your metric is.
It absolutely is, and I think an example of that is our new branch. If you looked at our old branch, we still sell our old range of branches as well, clearly. If you got someone else's branch, you put it next and you go, well, they're very similar, aren't they? Look at our new one. It's been changed, and so rather than it being round, actually it's quite easy to make a round thing, isn't it? Just put it in a lathe and make it, But ours is square because it's intuitive and ergonomic for the person who actually wants to use the adjustment on it, because it operates in the way because it's square, not round.
We said this.
So someone's gone,
some models that are trying to add the shark's fin and stuff, even when you've got a big set of massive gloves on, you're trying to find that 30-degree cone. We were doing some CFBT stuff the other day, and we actually tried yours out. It's very clear when you are hitting those particular points on the nozzle adjustment, because it has the clear square end. Subtle differences.
And
there
is subtle difference. It's a bit like one of the features that people like from people tell me about the helmet is the external adjustment on the back.
Yeah.
Because it's intuitive and it's very easy to find.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the case with other people's.
No.
So
you have to push it down over the bridge of your nose to try and get your fingers under the back.
There's little fine details of the products that actually go, someone thought about that.
Small things that make the big difference. So when we look at the huge range of products that the company's involved with now, we spoke before a little bit when we were alluding to what you want to be when you grow up. When there's a million options, it's hard to pick one. Like if we sat down to watch a film and I've got 5 DVDs, back when people used to do DVDs, it takes us about 10 minutes to pick a film. If I've got a wall full of 10,000, we might be stood there 2 hours later still trying to decide what film to watch. Now, when there's so many needs that need fulfilling and you have such a large company with lots of great innovative people and engineers, how do you decide where to put your focus? You're a leader in the fire engine building, you're obviously a leader in some of the PP stuff, but you do TICs, you do PPEs, you do fans and stuff like that. How do you decide which? Because there's also it's not a bottomless pot of money, and you have a limited personnel. How do you, Nick, decide where to place that focus and not wanting to be a jack of all trades, master of none?
It's one of those ones when you don't want to be a busy fool. Would be a better way of describing it. So it's each opportunity, but at some point in time, because this company has had some changes over periods of time since it was what it was originally, and then now a subsidiary company of Rosenbauer, and the personnel changed within. And so our what we want to do and have been doing for the last, say, 2 to 3 years is just settling into a way of working that brings some consistency. And then what do we want to invest the money we do have, because we also want to be self-sufficient here. We don't really necessarily want to go to Rosenbauer AG and say, can you lend me £1 million, because we want to do this. So we work in probably closer. The ties between the company, rather a subsidiary company, the ties between us and the parent company have got closer and closer over the years. And so what is your next investment so you can offer the variety of products? Okay, well, it's sitting across the other side of the table, because you invest in the people to be able to promote those products. Because if you haven't got the people to promote the products, don't attempt it. So it would be fair to say that if you rolled the clock back, say, 3 years, were we making a good attempt at selling all these variety of products? And you'd probably say, no, we weren't. And why was that? Well, it's because you just couldn't do it. So you have to invest in some people to push that forward. And it's a conscious decision to add that cost to your overhead and go, right, this is what we're going to do. Here's the budget. This is what we're going to do from now on. Headcount's going up, but there's the result is in these sales.
Frustrating though as well, isn't it? Because even if you know in your heart of hearts, and certainly with the experience you've had in the industry, you feel sincerely like, what we have got the best product. Yeah, but if you've built the best thing in the world and it's sat in the woods and nobody knows it's there,
absolutely,
it's irrelevant. No one's going to see it.
No one's going to see it.
One thing I would say though, you said that jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate that quote because it's actually completely misused. You know that.
It's not the full quote either.
No, the full quote is. I just googled it while you're talking. It really
better by far than the master of one.
A jack of all trades is master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of none.
Yeah.
And I think when you're talking about the offering, say that Rosenbauer has, yes, there are a branch manufacturer who just do, and they have a massive range of nozzles, and it's almost bamboozling to look at it and to look at, all these branches. They might have 20 branches they offer.
Yeah.
And you go in, well, actually, which one do I need? And when you've got a company like Rosenbauer that offers such a wide-ranging portfolio, actually, you might look at it and go, well, we're only 3 branches deep or 2 LPPs deep.
Yeah.
But they're actually really good ones just for what they do. We don't, and it's that reinventing the wheel, and you're looking at saying, you don't need to have such a ridiculous portfolio of products if what you do is very, very good inherently in its own right. So when we're looking at the FX branch that Nick was talking about there, it's a very, very good branch. Of course, some brigades will have a very niche requirement for a very certain thing that they've come across. Everyone's always a special circumstance. And then, okay, yes, you're going to need a very niche branch to do that. But, it comes back to that, jack of all trades, master of none. Well, oftentimes better than a master of one.
Yeah.
So, and I feel
it's a hard discipline, and it's a really hard discipline for us as well. And I ask selfishly because I think a lot of these conversations are almost like informal coaching for me when I have the privilege of sitting down with people like yourself. Because we look at the podcast, people go, you should, because they might probably said to Rosenbauer all the time, you should be doing this. You know, and people that aren't running businesses give you advice eternally about how you should run your business, and they go, Rosenbauer should do that. They say, oh, a podcast should have its own clothing, and should do its own this, and you should do guest speaking, and you should do that. I'm like, great, fantastic. I think it would significantly diminish my ability, certainly, to do this one thing quite well. And I want to do lots of other stuff for people, and we do work with companies, but it's a hard discipline not to chase and jump around, like you said, Nick, the busy fool, and bounce from thing to thing, and have a myriad of things, none of which you're doing very well.
I firmly believe in that. Do what you're good at.
Yeah,
you know, and if you're not going to be very
you've
good,
got such a legacy of the products you do.
Yeah, don't. If you're not going to be very good at it, probably best not to. You know, or be led by someone down a path, and you know, even despite after the last time,
the partnership you did with the ladders, you know, we spoke about Mets earlier. You know, you're building on the shoulders of a lot of knowledge there already. Yeah,
and if you look, there's a really good story from Mets because it's such an old company. Now, Rosenbauer is a very old company, and Rosenbauer has gone through several different phases. But the one consistency with Rosenbauer is, of course, it is a family-owned business, so it's still registered on the Austrian Stock Exchange, but it's the guys, the CEOs, are a member of the Rosenbauer family and so it has that entrenched in it. Rosenbauer's quite a success story, I have to say, in that regard, because often companies, Mets could be an example of it, and as it's got older in its life, it didn't change, it didn't modernise. Rosenbauer have brought to Mets that you need to improve, you need to innovate, you need to move on to the Mets ladder company, and it's the success it is today, I think, off the back of being invested in by Rosenbauer. And if you looked at their quality system, you mentioned Six Sigma earlier, you know, all those disciplines of lean manufacturing that and brought it in because it's very important because of the volumes that they are doing. It's very important because the quality of the product goes up and the reliability of the product goes up and the costs go down, makes you more competitive, and it's how it should be. So that respect, that investment in your business has to continue, and you can get dragged down a road by someone who says, can you do this for me? And you go, all right then. And after it's just a disaster, you go, I'm not doing that again. Until the next time.
It's easy to do as well.
It's very easy because it's sales.
It's a big airport or a big fire service in a certain country.
It's a very
want special treatment.
It is the brave person who says, no, I'm not doing that. No, and it's like I was talking to you earlier. It's just some things you go, I'm really not going to do that because I don't want my name on it. And a lot of things it's driven by your own pride and your own conscience. It'd be very easy to supply something that's patently no use to men, and then regret it for the day. And you can get tired with it, and you do hear it. You know, if you go to fire stations, people will say something, and it can be completely non-related to your product. It's something else. So one of the things that's caused a consternation in more recent times with fire trucks is the truck industry has mandated lane departure warning and emergency brake assist for trucks to stop sleeping drivers crashing into people. Now you're seeing them on your fire trucks.
We are.
And I've heard it said, oh, we don't like that new Rosenbauer truck because it's got lane departure and emergency brake assist. But the name Rosenbauer was mentioned. But it's not related to our product. Yeah. But because it's the truck.
Yeah.
And that's nothing new. That's happened.
You get tired with that brush. It's hard to stamp it out as well. Those small fires when they spark up and go, whoa, got to separate one from the other because that's not the same thing.
And it can happen. I've had to have this.
I'm sure you have that with legislative things that are imposed upon. They're not negotiable. You know, if you want to continue to exist in the market, this is what's happening.
No, absolutely, this is what's happening. And yes, you know, there is an argument that says not really appropriate for an emergency vehicle.
Good idea.
Yeah, trying to get that over to somebody is increasingly difficult. And we spoke about it earlier, and it says, you know, so Mr. Uwins, you're in court today because this fire engine ran over a bus stop full of people. Yeah. Did you modify the braking system? Yes, Your Honour. Right, okay, that's 20 years in prison then. Thanks very much. You know,
horrible closed questions asked in isolation.
So what do you want to avoid doing? Something that actually is going to be dangerous and goes against the advice you've been given by someone. So talking to the chassis people, am I allowed to do this? No, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, well, don't do it then in that case. You know, and there are reasons for these things. Now, whether it's that appropriate, because it's not always appropriate, and there is some exemptions, as we know, isn't there? You know, the emergency services have exemptions for their lighting systems, for instance, because in real terms, a fire engine or a police car or an ambulance doesn't meet the lighting regulation for road traffic vehicles. No. So they have an exemption for doing it, quite sensibly so. Yeah. You know, and it's like speed limiters and all sorts.
Just a quick reminder of our monthly giveaway with our partner HAIX and Tallyman. If you jump over to our social media platforms, you can once again get a chance to win a pair of HAIX Black Eagle Adventure GTX boots. HAIX is one of the biggest and best brands in the boot market and now supplies armies around the world, equipping special units, firefighters, paramedics, police officers when it comes to high quality, high tech footwear. And from our partner Tallyman, you can get 2 personalized BA tallies with your name on them and the logo of the podcast on the back. Just head over to our social media channels and all the instructions are there. You got to scroll through, find the post, and get on it. Now back to the show. I wanted to ask you both about balance, because you express a great deal of passion in the work that you do, and again, there's a bias in the fact we exist in a sector where a lot of it runs on passion. Some people could get paid more for existing in other sectors. How do you balance your desire to grow the company, to make sales, to hit these KPIs? Balance is a very difficult thing, and I ask personally because it's something I've certainly struggled with. I'm a recovered addict, but I'm always going to have that sort of desire to work more than anybody else. When you're in positions like yourself, Nick, and certainly when you exist in a sector like sales, when it's kind of a black hole, it will swallow as much of you as you want to pour into it. How do you strike that balance, and how do you not impose those expectations on the people that are working in your team or work with yourself, Andrew?
So mine's quite personal, actually. What drives me? I'm a twin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've got a twin brother, and my brother's got a PhD in chemistry, and he works in drug research. He's a very, very clever individual, very, very clever, and he's a biological yardstick. So if your whole life
biological yardstick, I love that
term.
I'm going to steal that. Biological yardstick.
So it's like, your whole life is, who's taller, who's growing up, who's taller, who's faster, who's stronger, and then as you start getting older, it's what you're doing as a job. And for me, particularly when I first come out of university, I was like a horse out the gates, just trying to earn as much money as possible, because I wanted to, because I just wanted to be successful. He had a PhD, he's got instant access to very, very high jobs. So I would say in my early days of working, I just took it too much of an extreme. I was just working all the time. I think for me personally, having children has reined that in quite a lot, because then you take a step back and think, well, why am I trying to do this? What am I trying to prove to the world? By
and Nick says about the metric. What's the metric? Success for what? Happiness based on what? And
then exactly, and my weekends now are just completely taken up with taking my little lads to rugby and to football. But when I'm just stood there, even it's in the lashing rain coming down sideways in Wigan, but to stand there and watch them doing that, and actually, why am I doing this? To give them opportunities. So I can take pride in what I do. I can take pride in the company you're working for, the sector you're working in. But then you can take pride in you providing for the kids, and to hear your boys say, "Yeah, I want to sell fire engines," and I go, "Well, yeah, okay." It's probably a little bit of whatever I was doing. You probably want to do the same. There's that side of it where I go, actually, your motivations change, your balances change, but it's still underlying.
How do you do that though, and still exist in such a competitive environment where there will be people without families? Oh yeah, fine, Andrew wants to. I don't want any kids. I'm just gonna drive up and down the country. I'm gonna be on a plane every day. I'm gonna get the sales. I'm gonna get the contracts, come hell or high water. Some people, and especially as again, we spoke earlier about bridging the gap between public sector and private sector, where there are some people in the private sector that will not share your character, they won't show you, but they might even show you morals. They are just willing to do whatever it takes and cut any corners or do whatever. How do you balance that?
I mean, for me, I'm incredibly. My wife will testify to it. I'm incredibly competitive. I can't even play a ball game without. It's not even just win, but it's got to be total domination.
So life is competition, and I don't think we should dispel it completely. We've gone through a generation of it's okay just to show up. No, it's not okay just to show up. Actually,
I tell that to my lads actually when they're doing the rugby, when he has to go and run and score. Try, he's only 4, and some of the parents are like, he's just taking part, and I'm like, Jack, it's first out, first back, go.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to it, when you have to do a competition, you have to practice winning now. because and that's where it comes down to it. When it comes down to even your professional life, a tender comes out, we don't get paid for coming second.
Yeah,
we get paid.
Oh, we all showed up though, didn't we? It was nice.
I did a really.
Is that going to pay the bills? Is it?
Yeah,
I did a
really.
Can't take your warm feeling to the bank. They're not going to accept it for the mortgage. All right.
Yeah, I could get a thesaurus out and write a really lovely worded tender document. We don't get paid on that, and that's. I think when you come into somewhere and yes, you're at the forefront of the sales team, and then you see the engineers in the workshop, you see the staff in the office. Yes, we all have our own parts of it, but I think particularly in the sales, you're at the forefront of the business. You win the contract.
There's a massive amount of trust placed in you because it's like that whole wave is behind you. We're going, oh, we've done all the great admin, we've created the great product, we've done all the innovation, we've done all the engineering, and then they're giving it to you. You're putting it in the van and you're driving out there, and they're trusting you to do a clear, concise representation of what. Don't undersell it. Ironically,
I think
don't mess it up.
When you say about there's individuals who don't have that same personal background, who just want to go out and just sell, drive up and down the country, when they have their own motivation for doing it. And I think, yes, okay, sometimes for me in my personal life, time limited, I can't 100% do that all the time, but you look at who you're responsible to within Rosenbauer UK, for example, and if the sales don't come in, at the end of the day, it's the staff within here that are the first to feel it. So,
100%.
Yes, okay, you have a responsibility to the company to perform, but there's the people that are within the organisation, and you have to do well for them. It's nice to come back in and say, actually, like last week we did a tour of Scotland, to come back in and say, yeah, it was fantastic, we did this, we did that, we've got this opportunity, we had this feedback, we had that feedback, they want to take this on test because of what we've shown them. I think it inspires the guys here, and it comes back even to the first thing you said about being in sales. And from my side of it is people go, I don't want to do it. Yes, there's certain aspects of people sometimes think, and there are a few who are just sort of greasy haired, slick suited, want to go out and make a quick buck, and that's it. But when you look at what to be in a modern sales position where it's very much consultative, what does the customer need, understanding that, matching their needs to what you can offer, and then knowing your responsibility to your colleagues to deliver the products that's been developed from the head office to the market. I think that's when you can truly be successful within the field. And I think,
but also, I think people forget there's nobody who isn't in sales.
Exactly.
Life is sales. Life is building rapport. We're part of sales right now. It's your ability to develop a relationship with those people, even if you're just CEO to engineer or receptionist to whoever. It's how quickly can you build rapport and how quickly can you get people on board with your idea, with your energy, with your passion, with your plan effectively. So I appreciate some people don't see the value in it, but there's no way of getting around it. You need to have a passion. It's whether or not you care about people as well as whether or not you're interested in sales.
I was at a restaurant a few months ago, and it was a really young waiter, and he was, do you want any sides with that? Oh, the onion rings are really good and all that sort of stuff. And I'll have some of that. I'll have some. I recommend these and stuff. And someone turned on to me and said, oh, you should work in sales. And I just sat there to myself and thought, he is. He is. The fact that you've said that to him, what a compliment that is to him.
Yeah.
Because he's just doing it. He's just talking to you. You're hungry. What is it you like? You should have this. You should have that. He could tell you there and talk about price of stuff and this is fun, but this goes well with that, and that wine complements that. He just understood exactly what his offering was.
He understood the needs of the customer.
He was asking them, what do you like? Oh, do that, perfect. And as we said, life is a sale, right? And I think the more open people are to salespeople to say, actually, we want to consult with you. Everyone can find that balance to get in the right product for the right purpose, and it's the way the world is now. I think definitely.
What about yourself, Nick? Because obviously, with the greatest respect with Andrew, he operates within sales. You have that more holistic view, and in terms of a UK perspective, the weight very much does come down on your shoulders as well. So you've also got, even though people may see you as the tip of the sword, you've still got people that you need to answer to and stuff. How do you handle that pressure? Because it very much could be seen as a black hole. This company will take as much as you are willing to give it. How do you balance that personally, and have you always balanced it?
I think I have. My wife often says, you're a different person at home than you are at work, from what people say. Okay. Because, when you're at work, you try to switch off from work. But I try to be as even, if that's a description, as possible. And you take a lot of pressure inward and suck it up. And don't overreact. That is, to me, is do not overreact.
How
anything that happens
when the pieces of the chessboard are so very big.
Yep.
And also, again, we speak about that authenticity.
Yep.
A lot of the stuff that you might be asking some of your engineers to do, you have the burden of knowledge sometimes of, I know what I'm asking you to do, and I probably might be able to do it myself. It's not my role to do it. How do you contain that frustration? Because I'm terrible at it. I'm getting better at it, but my passion probably overrules me sometimes. I call it passion. Some people might just say a flair.
Maybe it's an age thing, Pete.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you've just got a bigger bandwidth, or a little bit like a cushion. You can push too hard before you hit the wall. You can absorb more without it allowing you to react to it.
I would say that you change over the lifetime of your career.
Okay.
And so when you're younger, you're probably more impetuous. And as you start to mature, even as you're getting into middle age and everything, is that you are then more inclined to draw on those experiences you've had through your career, not necessarily consciously all the time, but I think they burn themselves on you subconsciously in that you don't react, or you do react as the person you learnt that one thing from in your life. So I've worked with a whole personality of people, and you can draw the good bits. Discard the bad and draw on the good bits of how to deal, and generally it is you're dealing with people. Dealing with technical issues is not a problem to me whatsoever.
No. Might even be more your comfort zone.
That absolutely is more in your comfort zone.
When you're trying to gravitate towards your comfort zone.
When you're trying to you do, and because you do what you're good at. So when someone says to me, "Oh, it's the accounts time of the month," you go,
"Oh God!" Do I need to sit?
Yeah,
well, yeah. I mean,
yes, I do.
You need to sit in it really.
Yeah, I do, and I am, as you said, and people here would not realise probably what it's all about. Is I sit from time to time, and it became more common during the pandemic, where there's a performance meeting every so often, and everybody from around the world is part of that, and you get to explain your profit and loss. Okay, so that's you got an audience, which is fine. You just have to get your head around it and report it. And my experience thus far with Rosenbauer is that it is a family, and it's very open, and you can say what you're thinking. Nobody's rude or anything like that. And so there's a high level of honesty, and that makes my job much easier.
So echoing that family, so several threads I want to pull on there. Echoing that family side of things, echoing a little bit back to the apprenticeship side of stuff, and also not wanting to micromanage people. You want to let them learn their own lessons.
Definitely.
How far do you let people wander down a path that you may have walked down before? And it's a leadership question, I suppose.
Yep.
You want them to learn the lessons. You want them to be able to be self-sustaining and fix their own problems. But you also don't want to give them enough rope to hang themselves. And especially when you're innovating and trying so many things, how far down path do you let people wander before you have to step in and say, I want you to learn these lessons, but just do it this way because I know how it needs to be done?
That's a complete moving feast. So for instance, if something's occurring and you know patently to start with that it's actually wrong, actually that's the moment where you go, right, hang on a second, right, let's just debate this a bit further. So one of my pet hates, okay, is someone says, we tried that 20 years ago, so there's no point doing it again. Right, hang on a second. That was 20 years ago. Technology, for instance, has moved on, and what we're doing actually has changed. Why don't we just revisit that again with what we know now? Because what we know now is not what we knew then. So let's just revisit that for the sake of revisiting it.
But even just the people in the room, I said it just yesterday. Someone said, similar thing. So we tried that a few years ago. I said, no, this situation's never happened before. I said, all right, Pete, I know you're new to this particular watch, but I said, no, it's never happened before. Never before has Pete Wakefield sat here with Nick sat there, with Andrew sat there, having this conversation. So this has never happened before. With this collective of experience in the room, we are going to think about this. It's going to get poured through a different filter. So it might be the same problem as a different filter in a different time. And you're absolutely right. No two things are ever the same.
I've got some.
They say a man never walks through the same river twice. Is that what I'm saying?
I like the sayings like that you get like that. And I'm in the, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Yeah.
So I'm not very quick to criticise someone. Because I'm not perfect either.
No.
So take someone at face value and then explore what it is they're capable of. in those. And then the other one is the person who never made a mistake is the person who never did anything.
I'm worried about the person, because if they never made one, you might be about to make the mistake with me.
Yeah,
so I'm really worried. I've had several businesses that have been unsuccessful, some that have been successful. But if you say, "Oh, I nail it every time," that's worrying me because you're going to mess it up sometimes.
Yeah, and it's not true.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so don't blame anybody. Actually, I hate that. You just blame someone. You do go what you learn from. My experience is that if you have someone that's working for you and some stuff's going wrong, most of the time there's an underlying reason for it. And I've said it to people here. That person changed from someone that they were 6 months ago into someone that you're thinking, what's going on? And 9 times out of 10, something happened. And it can be all the stuff that life throws at you, like death, divorce, marriage, children, all those things that can possibly, chapters of life, and it changes someone's personality. And my other experience is that if you say to them, what's wrong, they hit you with it, and then they feel so much better, and they nearly change back to the person they were 6 months ago, because they got it off their chest, couldn't just bring themselves to talk to you because some of it sounds pathetic. They go, oh, this might sound pathetic. You go, well, actually it doesn't. And then let them do the job, and they're relieved by it, by the fact it is, because there's that thing. So be careful how you don't knee jerk into anything that you do, is my experience. I do have a tendency to want to do that, but I stop myself from doing it. And I jokingly said to Andrew the other week, I'm a bit like Back to the Future, where the guy says, what, you chicken or something? So if someone says to me, no, you can't do that, my first reaction is, yeah, I think I can.
It triggers you.
It triggers me, because if someone says, oh, there's no solution to that, I can't. I go, oh, yeah, there is. Yeah. There has to be a solution. I know there isn't to everything.
We're quite similar in that aspect. There's a few things since I've started here where we've both gone, there's, for whatever reason, that can't be done. Me and Nick have both gone, no.
I've never seen somebody's wrong, but I do, and I don't try and play clever word games, but people, the language, and I have it just even around the kitchen table, just be so careful, because not only is everyone else hearing what you're saying, but you're hearing what you're saying. Every time you say it and you believe what you've just said, people say, always. Nick always does that, yeah? Andrew never, he never does that. Or we've tried millions? Name 1,000. Okay, we've tried 100. Name 10. Okay, we've tried this one thing several times and it doesn't work. Okay, great. So not always then, and not never. Yeah. Not, it's always going to be that way.
And that's one of the we had a not going into it, we had a situation where it was, well, that is it. And I said to Nick, and I'm not accepting that outcome. I'm not accepting it. We need a solution. And we had a bit of a chat, didn't we? And when you said that, and I said, right. And if you'd have said at the start of that, after that conversation, would we have found the outcome that we did? Probably, it was slim chance. Yeah. But now we're 95% of the way there, pretty much.
I think there's a difference there, and if I'm hearing you correctly, and it's similar when I come back to something like the podcast, the art of, talks about salesy a little bit, the art of conversation and the ability for people to sit in a debate, to sit in a muddy puddle. Some people think we're either getting on or we're arguing, but the ability to have a debate and not it to descend into emotional language so quickly, and because of things like technology and phones and all that sort of stuff, I actually think that's getting even harder. The skill sets that were rare used to be things like qualifications, degrees, stuff like that. Now I think the skill sets that are rare are people's ability to communicate, people's ability, some of the skill sets that we spoke about earlier, Nick. It's less about have you got the qualification or have you got the thing for that, and more about have you got the ability to problem solve and stay in an uncomfortable environment until we get a solution. I mean, in the emergency services, we have to do that because, certain problems will just go away if you forget about them long enough. Things that we go to, road traffic collision, fire, they're not going to resolve themselves. We need to come up with a solution, and we're going to have to work together in order to do that.
Yeah, I think listening is the one that a lot of people nowadays struggle with. The ability to just sit back, clear the mind, not think of a response to they're already thinking about what they're going to say in answer to the question.
Are you listening, or are you just waiting for your turn to speak?
Exactly.
That's the difference, yeah.
Exactly. And I've had it sometimes where people, and even when we've had Teams meetings here, and like, are you still there? Yeah, I'm just listening. I don't need to say anything. I'm just listening. Tell me what you got to say. I want to hear it. I want to listen to it, and then I'll formulate my response. Like you
some
say,
people have a fear of silence as well, though.
Yeah.
They have a difficult. Some people speak because they have something to say. So, what do they say? Wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools speak just to say something. They just need to fill the silence because they fear it and they feel like...
we had that conversation the other day.
It's a thing, you know, and it's hard. I struggle, certainly with a blooming podcast, you know, sometimes you feel like, it's okay, let it sit for a minute.
I think it is a particular... it can be a skill, but I think you should be conscious of people. I've been in so many positions where you're with people, and it can be, so the more senior officers in fire service and county councillors, all sorts. I've been in those environments, and on those occasions, it's a bit speakers when you've been spoken to. They want to talk because that's the nature of the beast, which is absolutely fine. And you let them. Don't be the salesman who gushes at them, and if they've got an opinion, don't have a counter opinion. You can have opinion, but let them do this first. It's comes a bit of a role reversal in that he's the guy. He's been promoted for a reason. You know, his intellect is quite high. Just don't insult him by talking over him. You know, and let him speak. And you hear, I've seen it so many times where you almost want to kick someone under the table and go, "Would you just be quiet and just let them speak?" It's just, you know, because you'll just get on a roll, and it's very dangerous for a period of time. And often you learn from listening to that. And many
people are desperate to tell you what they know as well.
And I've met
people like that.
the party of the people that I've really enjoyed the most in meeting over time, and it hasn't occurred for a long time because it doesn't seem to happen anymore. The old Chief Fire Officers Conference was the exhibition, and everybody that went to it, there was anybody, and there was a social element to it as well, and you did meet the authority members. I'm talking 20 odd years ago. Like, you know, what were they like that you met them? I tell you what, I've met so many great people. They were absolutely priceless, of different political persuasion, and so many different points of view. And actually, when you get to know them a little bit better, we realise, that's that political game they're all playing, and they're having a good laugh about it at the same time. It's just quite refreshing that you hear it. You go, "That's brilliant, that is. I love that." You know, and they'd say things saying, almost they're saying it to you, but don't tell anybody. You know,
just keep playing the game.
Keep playing the game. You know, and it is a political game. It's like that. And when I've seen it before, when you see, you know, you have amalgamations of fire services. If there is a political way to do it, it often happens. If there isn't a political way for it to happen, not at the fire service level, but at the council level, you know, it'll fail if there isn't one.
I suppose echoing back to when you said about designing these products for end users as well, if you're just there giving them your data sheet, or you're just there spieling at somebody, you're just repeating stuff you already know. If you do genuinely have a sincere desire to help them fix their problem, which is what you say you do, then surely, you said, like 2 ears, 1 mouth, the majority of what you're doing should be listening, should be getting that feedback.
Yeah, listen. Absolutely, listen. Yeah, we don't know. As I said to you before, we watch people doing firefighting, and you can understand the principle, because you watch it, because the kind of guys we are, is that we want to understand it.
Yeah.
And so you watch you and do and think, well, actually, would I do that like that? Or I may or may not want to do that. Would I try to do something different in the way they find? But we understand that you're the firefighting experts, and we listen to what you say. And we might, because we have an opinion, say, well, I just watched you do that. Why don't you try?
I always say to people, this is quite an unfair trick that people don't realise. Like, I sit in a command role most of the time, and I'll be stood back and I'll be watching. And the irony is, you learn so much more from watching and being an observer. It's kind of unfair. Your experience level enhances so much, because you can choose. I'm going to stand in, I'm going to change and look at it from that angle. I'm going to ask one question and step back. And you do learn so much more, because I'm not stuck, pigeonholed. Like, if you just sat in this facility and never went out and spoke to anybody, you might think you're making loads of progress, but you'd have such a narrow lens of what you're looking at, versus when you stand back, listen, learn, observe, you do pick up so much more.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not entirely how I start the comment, but every time I go and visit anyone, you know, just tell me about your fire service, just tell me about your brigade, tell me about, I want to know.
Yeah, and you have to continually to do that. Just because I've been in the industry a long time doesn't mean that doesn't change, and so you have to keep inquiring, and you have to keep listening to what's going on, because it's very, very important that you listen. And the fire services organisation is a company employing people, and it's a wide variety of people. And in that respect, you're no different to us, in that we employ a wide variety of people. And are all those people the same? No, they're not. Do they have different skills? Yes, they do. That's just how it is. So you have to listen. So when you've got, you know, I often go to places where there's like recruits courses and stuff going on, and you watch what they're showing them, and sometimes you go, "Oh, that's a bit funny," you know. But it is what it is, because those people are those people, and workforce is massively diverse.
Yeah.
So what you're going to get a complete mixed bag, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's you can't help it. It's just the way it is. And so how do you deal with it?
I think that's so much, again, when I echo back to what we're doing here, just transparency for everybody. We do put together these brief style things before we go and visit people, but I always think like there's a spectrum again, because I don't want to over prepare, because also I often come away from things like this and I'll go, you know what, likelihood is when I get there, and we spent a bit of time before we sat down today, is I'm more interested in Nick and Andrew than I probably am in Rosenbauer, which sounds a little bit harsh, but I always think about like the emergency services, the fire service, for example. It's only interesting because of the people that are in it. It's not interesting because of what it is. It's just a company. It's just a badge. It's just an organisation. It's a pyramid-style structure, somebody at the top and people at the bottom. It's interesting because of the people that are in it.
Yeah, you have to
look
look
the power of Rosenbauer is because of the people that are in it. It's just a name on the wall. People say, "Oh, no, it stands for more than that." It does, because of the people that are in it, not because of what it is. It's just a name, it's just a structure.
Yeah, I mean, we're sat around a big table now, but if you got everyone in this organisation and sat us all around this table, we all bring something different to the table.
Yeah,
we've all got our own skill set, and while someone might be a bit more timid, another one might be more louder, another one might call a spade because that's the way they are, and whatever. But like you said, it's the individuals that make it, and
that's why I always get asked to go out and do stuff like this, even within my own service, because you don't have a dog and bite yourself, do you? If somebody's willing to stand and speak and chat and stuff like that, let them do it, because we've got other people for other skill sets. Talking about different things and skill sets, I wanted to ask Nick about, we spoke about Intersec outside. Now, you went out to Dubai in January, and there's a big, strong focus in digital products. So we've spoken about some of the origins and the chassis and some of the more fundamental stuff, but I wanted to ask about digital products, such as the connected fleet, the connected drones, tactical simulators. This is a whole area we haven't explored yet. How important is that aspect of Rosenbauer's digital solutions, and how you are working on a portfolio of those technologies, as well as all of the stuff I've already discussed?
Yes, so that element of the business is relatively new, and what the company decided to do was separate it because it became so important.
Okay.
It's
a beast in itself, isn't it?
It is a beast in itself. And we've had digital solutions, if you want to call them that, for some time. So the telemetry on the vehicles has been around for a while. Originally, we're now calling it Connected Fleet, was called Service for Fire.
Okay.
So we're recording telemetry on the vehicles. It's more prevalent in aerials and Panthers. For instance, we can calibrate the foam system on a Panther remotely.
Yeah.
We can look at what's happening. We can look at the aerial appliances, for instance, so we can read how high they are.
I was going to say, so a lot of the digital feedback you get on them, from the downforce to the tilt to all of that sort of stuff, rather than it feels there or thereabouts.
So an aerial, for instance, could be an incident. We will have known when it went. We'll have known what it did when it was there. We know how high it was extended when it was there, what the ground pressure on the jacks were, and so on. And the user can see it at their workshops if they want to look at it. They've got full permission to
exactly
do it.
When someone
they want to know
put the override on the warning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they knew, didn't know, and that's all useful data. Now that's moving, of course, because as the digital world's become more complex.
Yeah.
And with the invention of the electric fire truck, sometimes, I know when I first had the presentation from the company about digital solutions, you sort of scratch your head after you go, what's he talking about?
Yeah.
Because it's very complex. So the way they explained it, it's the new generation. There's the people who've been in the industry a long time like I have, and the new digital, because the way that the world works, everybody's got a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop, a this, a that, a smart television, it's all smart, everything's smart, isn't it?
Yeah.
So why would you not have the smart solution for your firefighting intervention? I think one of the latest things that I've seen, actually, I saw it a little while ago, but Rosenbauer's partnered with another company in Germany, and it's a satellite detection system for forest fires.
Yes, so we've looked at some stuff like this with the drone technology and with that. Yeah.
There was also one that some time ago was a camera-related system that you had to put, in your counties, for instance, you'd put in strategic places some cameras, and they would smoke detect. And so there'd be like a smoke detector that looked for the 20 miles, something like that. So this moving technology, and then do you want to know what your people are doing, where they are, where the vehicle is, where the asset is. So there's part of me originally when people went, we need to record the assets on the fire. Seriously, can you not trust a firefighter with an axe? But to keep the inventory up to date on the truck, why not do it in a modern way that says, yeah, we know the axe came off the truck, but actually it never went back on there?
I've seen some of those systems. I've never actually, I've heard of some of those systems. I lie. I've never seen one in person, but I know, and James, maybe you can remember, some places where you can just, you drive into the bays and every time something goes on off,
you can.
It digitally records absolutely the movement of everything.
Yep.
Lots of cost saving, lots of, rather than emailing every fire station in a service and say, has anybody seen the axe? You know exactly where it was when it came off. So there are a lot of
there are, and you can do it, and you can do, for instance, say you've got your spreaders, and 6 pumps go to the job, and for instance, that the truck that went to this fire station went away with the other station's spreader.
Yeah,
because it recorded it on. I don't know what is that, but what it is on the truck is a load of readers and antennas. So when it goes back into the station, it connects automatically to the station and does a check. It's not the cheapest thing in the world to do.
No.
It's getting cheaper because this technology moves. The costs go down.
It's also not cheaper versus the number of items that find their way into people's garages and don't turn up back on fire engines as well, though. So
absolutely.
There's a big cost saving
So
there.
It is. It's just, to me, it's a complex subject. We've got lots of solutions that are coming in, but that's why it was separated. There is also the separate part of our business that is dealing with that, and that includes the RT fire truck, the electric fire truck. So it's been separated out to focus on those particular things, which is very important.
Is that where your arm extends into most of it in terms of the RT? Because obviously there's a big crossover and needs to work quite efficiently with yourselves. What are some of the most exciting things that are going on in that area at the minute? Because everyone's trying to get after it.
I think the most exciting for me is the truck itself.
Yeah.
But its interaction with your digital tools. So if you get in the RT, on the dashboard of the RT is this enormous screen. Now, we haven't seen it in practice yet, but that screen is going to be the tablet, and it's going to be connected to the control unit, to the headquarters, to the drone. There's going to be footage backwards and forwards. We've done it now. We do have customers, particularly with Panthers, who have a router on the vehicle, and they're sending the signal. We do it with aerials as well. It's been done for some time. There's a router on the vehicle, still only as good as the signal you can send it. Yeah. But it can be done. And that's just finessing itself. So as we've come, 3G, 4G, 5G, you're getting better signals to be able to transmit the information you want to transmit.
I suppose unlike other things that your sector has had to do, though, in this particular challenge, you're benefiting tremendously that you're not the only ones doing it. The electric car market is exploding. We've got a couple of them, but we've still got some old combustion engine style vehicles in my family. But a lot of that, for example, for my car, you can switch it on. You can give somebody a token to let them drive it. You can send all the details to it. It tells you everywhere it's been, every journey it's done, the tire pressures, everything. So a lot of that legwork, investment, infrastructure is not having to be done by solely this company or this sector. So there are a lot of benefits. Unlike before, if you were trying to find a solution for fire engine vehicles, for example, it's a very niche market. You're the only person going to be investing in it.
So you do like the truck boys. So the trucks, when they're developing trucks, now that's more common that they've got their own. And they have had for some time. I think Scania did it just quite a few years ago now. And you think, what's that? Come on my computer, and it was your monthly report on your fuel consumption. What are they sending me that for? But it's their truck-based system for telemetry that's giving a report to the haulier or the fleet manager. This is giving him the diagnosis. And some of that gets transmitted into driver training.
Yep.
It's a bit like
we have it on all of our fleet management.
I did this quite a long time ago. Had a day out at Brands Hatch with one of the touring car teams, and when you got to look at them looking at the telemetry, when you watch the qualifying and that on the practice on the F1 teams, and they go, oh, he's gone back out on another lap. There's another 2 laps. When he comes back in, and they're looking on the screen, so they'll look. See, there you go. Look. You put the brakes on then, and you had it for how long, and you put the, you accelerate it for this, feedback on everything, and that's how these systems are starting to become. Now, is that overly complicated for what you want to do as firefighters? But it should enable you to be more efficient over a period of time, because it should be then put through in your training, and you should be, particularly driver training, it becomes more difficult, using the telemetry to help your drivers to perform a bit better than what they do now. Is anybody expecting a fire engine driver to be that efficient for fuel economy? Well, I don't think so.
Probably not. Yeah. Know your audience.
But you could get some decent feedback from driving, from the telemetry in that respect. And then, do fire engines still carry books of stuff? Yeah, some people do, don't they? Whereas they've got an MDT, and they've had MDT for quite a number of years now, but the information's become more sophisticated. So you can get it now.
It was a shiny ornament for the first few years. If it worked.
We go into an RTC. Right, okay, what car's involved? Oh, it's a such and such. Go. Tap it up in your tablet, and it will often tell you like airbag information, fuel information. What's it made of? Where would you recommend you cut it to cut the roof off? And that sort of information. And so you're getting more information digitally into your vehicle to use your equipment more efficiently. It's giving you information more and faster than what you've had before. Yeah, right or wrong.
Now, Andrew, we were talking there about different digital solutions. Obviously, when you're actually out there, boots on the ground, what are people asking to see? What sort of products? I know you have a wide range of your thermal imaging cameras, some of the electrical vehicle extinguisher stuff we're looking at, which is still in development. What are people wanting to see? What are the demands that are coming from the sector? People say, can you show me the latest X? Is it different every time, or is there any correlations of products people want to see?
For example, I was talking to a customer yesterday for the TICs, and they were wanting to see, say, cloud-based. So for obviously the TICs that we have black box record, and they're saying, well, actually, we then have to take the TIC from the truck to take it inside into a computer, then we have to download it onto a computer. If we're looking at incident reviews or for training purposes or for whatever reason. So we would like a cloud-based system for it. And yeah, it's a great idea, but you've got to look at limitations of the technologies. You've got to look at the price and what's involved in it. So as we talked about before, I did history when I was at university, and one of the things I always like to think of is it took man 4 times longer to go from copper swords to iron swords than it did to go from iron swords to nuclear bombs. Yeah. And the technology is moving at such a rapid rate that that might sound like that sounds like a great idea, but innovation sometimes gets more and more complicated. So they'll say, like, for example, like, we want cloud based on the TICs, or we want X, Y, and Z. But actually, when you've got to look at it and say, is it over engineering at this point? Is it something that really needs to be done, or is it just that you have something that does the job very, very well? Yeah, it tends to be, I would say, from obviously I'm still quite young in my Rosenbauer career, but anything that's electronic based, you tend to see that that's where they have the most expectation versus. So if you look at our Otter LPP, there was a document I found on our internal database a few months ago. It's from 1996, and it's almost not changed. Yeah, because it just does what it does.
Does what you need it to do. Yeah,
there's little tweaks that people want, like
some people want change for change's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
They just want the next year's iPhone. And you're like, it's pretty much the same.
So when you say, what are people asking for in the market, we're quite lucky that we can quite customize stuff that we do. So they'll say, well, we want a swivel joint on this, and we want X, Y, and Z. Yeah, okay, we can do that. That's fine. We can offer that. But when you say about demands for the market, I think that the expectation exceeds reality, particularly in the digital offering of the products, because sci-fi maybe or whatever gives you an unrealistic perception of what's really possible, makes it look like everyday technology compared to the feasibility of taking that to market.
So for me, that speaks a little bit about, we spoke before about different types of innovation versus what is real progress in the industry and what is just change for change's sake. When we're talking about that, how much innovation do we realistically think we've seen in the past decade versus what is just a new version of the old thing? How many people do you think are trying to innovate but are actually just doing something very similar to what's already been done? Because now there's very few things which are true innovation, and some are just a reiteration of something that's already been done. Rosenbauer is one of probably the few companies that really are. And maybe it's because they are so globally known, they have the ability to step into areas that other people haven't done before. What is the exciting innovation that's really happening, and is there much these days?
I think it is the electric technology in the vehicles. Okay. And it is coming along, as these things do, at a bit of a pace.
Does that create a fear that people, because somebody's going to miss the boat with it?
It does create a fear, I think, actually, that some people might miss the boat of it. It's exciting from salespeople's point of view if you've got a product that no one else has is actually quite a
So
nice...
it's easy for Andrew.
It's
but
quite
not
a nice
for
feeling. It is like when you've got good products, it's part of the attraction for working for Rosenbauer. It's great products, you know? Okay,
Nothing harder than trying to flog something that you don't, like we said before.
I'm in my early 30s, right? So I'm at that sort of sweet spot where I can get a grasp on the technology as it's evolving.
You've grown up with the technology a little bit as well. You get it.
Yeah, I get it, and I can show it. But I'm also able to look at it and not get swept away in it. So particularly with, like Nick was saying, with the electric vehicles, this 2030 mandate of all new vehicles have got to be electric. That's going to have huge challenges around it, not just from the fire service, but from a nationwide infrastructure
Especially
point of view.
when you know, Nick, how long it takes to develop these products. Some people think, it's 8 years away. No, that's now. That's now.
Yeah.
That time is going to go.
Yeah, they say all cars have got to be electric from 2030. Well, 4 or 5 years ago, if you've seen a Tesla, you were like, ooh. Now it's you go to a service station and
everywhere.
There's 7 of them parked up. But it's exciting for me because that electrification of vehicles and of
do we realistically think the infrastructure is going to be able to get there in time, considering the fact that this is going to be very reliant on a lot of services installing all of this infrastructure themselves? You can deliver them the best possible product, and you already have, I know you already have examples of it, but it relies so heavily on an infrastructure that's a massive investment for governments, for services, some of which like to pretend they're bigger than perhaps they are. Some local services don't have massive budgets, despite how they like to be treated.
I mean, do you want my personal view on it, or
whatever you're willing to have recorded on a podcast?
my personal view is I think that electrics for the here and now in the 2030 is okay, but I think it's a good stopgap. But I don't think it's the absolute future. But
it's not the answer.
No, I think probably maybe hydrocarbon fuels in terms of is it hydrogen vehicles and stuff like that. Could be.
I do look at that, and the most abundant gas in the universe.
But that technology, as Nick, that takes time to develop. The electric technology is here and for now. So the RT and the electric vehicle is very exciting because that is a solution for the now. Mm-hmm. But then it's where do we go above and beyond that, and that's part of the. When you've got a company like Rosenbauer who puts so much into R&D, probably 9 out of 10 I'm unsure that there is something going on behind the scenes somewhere where they'll be thinking about the next thing. They'll be thinking about the RT's been developed. They'll be thinking about the next thing. When the time comes, we'll be told about it. But that's just my personal opinion. I think the electric's a solution for the immediate. What happens outside of that?
It is a bit of a case of in certain industries, like we've already spoken about, so municipal, aviation, industrial.
Yeah.
In aviation, for instance, is the diesel engine going to be replaced by electricity anytime soon? Yes, it will be, because there will be, for us, from our point of view, that E-Panther will be launched at Institutes, so that will come along. Say, for instance, you, not being unkind, small regional airports, are they going to buy a electric ARF vehicle that's twice the price of the diesel engine version? The answer to that question would most likely be no, not unless someone gives them the money or they've got to do it.
Not because they morally don't believe it's the right thing to do,
absolutely.
Or not because they don't care about the environment.
Just it's out of their league. Yeah. And even there are regional airports who don't buy new vehicles, they buy second-hand vehicles because that's the market they're in. And that's just the way it is, so it comes and goes. And it
is a privileged decision.
It is, and that. But the private car market. So, what's the difference between what I do and my wife does for her motoring? Could she have an electric car? 100% have an electric car, and probably the next car will be that, because she does 4,000 miles a year. How do I do 40 to 50,000 miles a year in an electric car? Well, I suggested a great difficulty.
That's the reason I drove what I'm driving today, because my electric vehicle has a 200-mile max on it, and when it's on motorways, it's not as efficient, so you're not going to get that out of it. And I know I'd have to stop and recharge it.
So I think one or two things are going to happen. Either the electric technology will spiral exponentially in its development that makes it I think when you look at the Elons of the world and things like that, when there's that much behind it, somebody is so heavily invested in it, I'm just going to sit 5 steps behind him and benefit off all those innovations. What convinces me more is when you look at these gigafactories they're building, the money they're putting into it. So when you say about...
And the fact that all of our own personal electronics require that market to also advance. There's so much relying on it, or there's so much behind it.
And that's why I said it's just my personal view. It's like when you look at what's available now, it's hard to see for me that it's massively, for the future. But at the rate it's developing, like you're saying, who knows? A few years ago, like you said, when the first Tesla hit the road, it was almost like a gimmick, really. Oh, it's an all-electric car. I want to hear the engine rev. I want to hear I want to hear everything about that.
That's one of the things because again, I'm totally flip end of that. I love how quiet mine is. Honestly, I love it. I'm not a motorhead. I'm not bothered with that. But it's horses for courses in that respect. So I wanted to ask yourself, Andrew, thinking back to the work that you do and when you're going out, and when people are listening in on this and they want to learn a little bit more about, I know I've got Rosenbauer coming in next week, so I'm going to speak to Andrew, or I spoke to Nick, or I saw him at this. What is the best way for organisations, for services, for companies? What's the best way for them to interact with Rosenbauer? As in, what's the best way when building a relationship for them to get the most out of you and you to get the most out of them? I mean, Nick, you've said before about tell me the problem you're trying to solve. Don't tell me what you think you want. How can we articulate that in a way? Because we talk about crossing that bridge. We spoke about it earlier outside. How can companies work best and organisations work best with organisations like Rosenbauer when they're trying to fix their problems? They're trying to find the right product for their solution.
I think it's having that open door approach and look at it and think, we're coming to you because, yes, we are a provider of equipment, but we're coming to see what it is you need, what it is you want, and show you what we can offer. And if there's a match there, fantastic, great, and let's find a way to come to business together. If it doesn't quite meet what you need to do, then that's okay. And when you say about how to interact with us, there's a couple of different ways that people ultimately end up purchasing from us. Some of it is one-off sales, where it's we go and we show them something and they go, yeah, I'll have that, that's great, and fine, happy days, and do that. And then there's the tender process, which is entirely more complicated route to market. But I've had it already where we get some of the tenders come through and you look at what they've spec'd on paper and you go, what? Are you...
What do you make it? What do you want?
And I think it's that pre-engagement side of it as well. What would benefit from customers is to say to us, look, we are going to go to tender for X, Y, or Z products in the future. Come in, we can show them how it works, inspire them, show them what the latest thing is. Because some of the tenders that come out, and sure Nick will see it on the vehicle side of it, they're pulling a tender from 10 years ago and just changing the date on it and sticking it back out. And actually, what you're specifying there, with the fans, for example, we've now got more and more going down the battery route on the fans, and even the way the technology progresses on that, the first gen battery fans are the one now, they become lighter, the batteries become more efficient.
They don't know what's out there, and in their tenders, what they're probably demonstrating is a lack of awareness of the industry, because they've written something that's probably not appropriate for the range of products, or they're automatically opting out of things that they're saying no to things they don't realise they're saying no to.
Exactly, and there's a time and a place where we sit down and we have to sharpen the pencil and we have to look at what is it you want, what's the time frame, what's the price, and that sort of side of it. But on a daily basis, to have that us coming in to just show you what we can offer to inspire the firefighters within the watches and the stations to go, actually, that looks like something that we could want, and to show the chiefs as well, and for them to go, oh, that's a good innovation. So when the time comes, they know what's available. That's on a daily basis probably one of the best ways to have it. And so, is it
a healthy relationship on the whole most of the time, or are people just petrified to tell you what their budgets are in case you try and snatch it all, or is it still a healthy relationship? Because like we said before, Nick, some people think everyone is a salesperson, and some people see that you're actually part of the sector. You're not trying to just take advantage in that entrepreneurial way.
You have to have your own market intelligence. So you've got to be a bit savvy about what's going on in the marketplace, and you've got to fit into that market if you want to make some gains. That's not to say that you're going to just slit your throat over it, because that's a completely pointless exercise. It's like we said earlier, race to the bottom. Well, we're not taking part in one of those. So we have good products. Our instinct now, and has been for what we want to do, is to be able to provide our information about who we are, what we're like, what products go from the bottom upwards, because often it is from a top down. But we want to explain to people, it's a bit of an approach, I said to you earlier, our market, our parent company, there's a lot of firefighters in the business, volunteer firefighters, it's based on volunteers, a different market. But it's a bottom-up pressure to have the best equipment, best vehicles and so on like that. We want to make sure that people are aware of, because we do get it when you go, oh, I'm from Rosenbauer, and they go, who? Unbelievable to me, been in the industry such a long time, and Rosenbauer's always been an influence on my career, because you just go, oh, what are they doing? And now working for the company, it astounds you when people go, oh, I work for Rosenbauer, they go, oh, yeah, I think I've heard of them. You go, whoa, really?
But again, that's why we're getting such a turnover in staff now.
Yes.
You've got to kind of take a big deep breath and go back in and do all of it all over again, because people are new into the sector. They just don't. It's not a lack of respect. It's just their lack of awareness. They've only been in the job 4 years, and now they're in a position.
Yeah, and I think everybody there's different procurement strategies by people, and some are short, and some are long, and some are medium. A complete moving feast. And I like to see someone who's written a specification that is open. You get to reply and you do your selling of your product on score, the highest score to win the business. And it's a long-term thing that can change over its contract period. So say, for instance, you had an 8-year contract.
Yep.
And 4 trucks. The truck that was supplied in year 1 is not the same as the truck that's being supplied in year 10, because technology is moving on. The specification has to have a scope to be able to do that. When you enter into that long-term agreement, you get us as the expert for free because we have a long-term contract. If we're simply replying to a tender, that's simply what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Because that's what our competitors are going to do.
Yeah.
So do we offer anything else? No, we don't actually. Well, we do, but we don't, because that's not how the industry's operating. We go, do you look at a tender document, and as much as you want to go, yes, yes, do we, yes, 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 comply, all the way down and go, there you go, I can build that thing that you've just asked for, I comply. End of story. No, don't really like
How many people do you think do that and then try to retrospectively go,
nearly everybody.
God, let me try and turn this teacup into a flask because I said it was a flask?
Nearly everybody.
Why did you tell them that? Because we just needed to. Now make it happen.
Nearly everybody.
Okay. That's got to be so hard to hold on to your moral fibre and not pander to that behaviour.
We were speaking earlier about how do you deal with the pressure.
Yep.
That's a pressure. And the best thing is don't react and just take it as it comes, because it would be very easy, because of some people's personalities, to be very annoyed.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it is. And you're dealing with people that maybe who do work like that, or that's their approach, or all those things. It's a moving feast. So our job is...
But it does damage the industry as a whole, though. We were speaking to Simon Hunter, and he said 25 years or whatever he's been in the corporate wear market, and he says there's no other companies still around.
No.
There's none, because they've all gone for the short sell, quick smash and grab.
Yep.
But they've damaged the market so much that now, like you've said, people are expecting a 7-year guarantee on a contract and not factoring in the after sales side and saying, look, well, every innovation that comes, Rosenbauer, you're going to benefit from that because we're going to continue to develop your product, rather than just we'll give you this one thing right now and it's not fit for purpose in 3 years.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because we've seen it in some of the LPP tenders where they go, what's the aftermarket, or what's the lifespan of this product? We want a 10-year lifespan for the product, but we also want the cheapest possible price. And it's like you're saying, hang on a minute, you want us to support, innovate, and
or some companies go, no, it's fine, just it looks good now, doesn't it? Don't worry about what it's going to be like in a week.
For 10 years' time. Well, if you want us to be able to fulfil that side of the contract, then you have to understand...
A whole different conversation there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's that, it's that engaging with us and say, well, what is it that you can offer? And when you look at for example, with Rosenbauer, the pedigree that's behind it, there's 150 years of history behind us.
It's not an accident.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere, the business, so we can provide that. But some people, if they have that open door approach to us and let us come in and just tell them what we're about and what we can offer, then they can get that assurances. And it's not just something that we've written up, we can do it for 10 years. Anyone can do that, but when they sit down with us and they see that the human aspect of it, and we can talk about the business, and they go, "Oh, actually, we see the substance there behind it."
I think when you know people better, like I've done over the time, when you've got relationships with people in the services, from the fleet managers to engineers or whatever they are, and when you get to know them better, you off the record, you can ask them questions. You can say to them, why do you keep asking that question? Oh, we need this, and go, yeah, but I know that you're not going to look at it again.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know, but so it's all right, and it's just it's part of the way that the game is played, if you like.
Yeah.
So there's some shortcomings of the tender process, and I don't think anybody will tell you any different. But there's also some benefits as well. But
there needs to be a structure of some form, otherwise it's the Wild West.
And there's good reasons for it. Yeah. There've been occasions when a supplier has delivered something. You go, oh, that's why have I got that? That clearly that thing on there is something you bought from somewhere somewhere else, and it's going to break down. And they go, yeah, and.
Yeah.
And they go, what?
That's not cricket. Surely that's have we got away with that?
But it does the job at that moment in time. The thing that's bolted to it, and will it see out the warranty period? Yeah, likely. Will it see much after the warranty period? Probably not.
I think the tender process is a fantastic way of procuring and getting the details for what you're getting, but you really need to know beforehand what's available. Yes. I think if and that's possibly where, and not just in this sector, but just in general, where businesses fall short, is they have to go to tender, they have to get 3 quotes or along those lines, and then they're not really understanding what's available beforehand. So it's a great process, but it needs by the time you've gone to tender, there's actually 4 or 5 steps you could have done beforehand. That means that exercise isn't a waste of time and money, that you're really getting the most effective outcome and responses to it. The last thing you want to do is have a company look at it and go, no, not for me, that. And we've had it a couple of times where they phone up and say, well, we put a bid in, please. I'm like, well, no, because we haven't got a product. What you've specified is so ludicrous.
Yeah.
We can't do that. We can't. We need one. We need
and that's
a bid.
why I suppose that procurement process can't be seen as a singular one thing, and it all depends on this. It's the intangibles, like you say, about going into services, about having firefighters working for you that understand the process, about doing things like we are doing sat here right now, those things that don't directly fall within a procurement thing but help you to get a greater appreciation of what that company is about, what they do, how long they've been around for, what their morals are, so you know who you're getting into bed with, is a strange term, but you know
yes.
who you're doing business with.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And we are often asked to fill out a form and say, can you tell us who you are? And how you do this, that, and the other. And you go, okay, that's fair enough, because not everybody knows who you are. Oh, and by the way, the word limit's 250. You go, I can.
We see this so much in the services when we see applications. I'm like, can't we do some 360 feedback? Which is like, I'd like to hear about from somebody that's worked with Rosenbauer before. I'd like to hear about, saying me, I'd like to hear about, does somebody trust Peter? Do they, what's he like to work with? Not tell me what you think about yourself and Jerry, because you could just lie. It could all just be absolute BS. Do you know what I mean? How do I know, what your longevity is like? How do I know your products don't fall apart into, well, go and speak to these services. We've been around for 150 years. And learn a bit more about us than it's going to take in 250 words.
Yeah, I mean, I've suggested, we suggested on numerous occasions, so rather than me fill the form in, why don't you come and do a company audit? If you really want to know how the company functions, why don't you do the audit? Now, they don't want to do that because there's a cost to doing that, isn't there? But I don't.
But there's also a massive hidden cost of getting into a contract with somebody and then realising you've got to spend a lot more money replacing everything and things that weren't included in the deal, and the fact that they weren't going to give you the after sale. All of that also has a hidden cost.
Yeah, and I think we understand that there's like you said, there's the reasons for doing it certain ways, because it should protect the authorities from being missold something. I think that the world is a better place for the municipal fire services right now, because the framework is really doing its job for the most part. In the only danger with frameworks is because they last for quite a while, not many of them allow you to do something different in the lifetime of the framework or let anybody join it, which is fair enough actually. But one of the latest ones, I think there was the West Midlands did a framework for equipment on behalf of it's a national framework, but West Midlands Procurement did it. and there is a mechanism in there for the suppliers that are on there to add new products over the lifetime of the framework. Because say you're innovating all the time. So say you did it 2 years ago, and you didn't have a battery fan 2 years ago, and 2 years later you do have one. What, you can't offer one for 3 years because the framework says it? No, that's ridiculous. Yeah. So yes, that's really good in the fact that they put that mechanism in place that you can add new products onto the framework, because it has been the case. And probably maybe if Simon Hunter had, I don't know if he'd alluded to it, was a single supply framework, which seems a bit odd. If you get it, for say you get a national framework for clothing, for instance, it does exclude the other suppliers. And if it's captured the whole, what happens to those suppliers? Do they wait for 10 years, or do they cease to exist, or what? So
and
when
then you've got a monopoly on your hands. Then what are you supposed to do?
It's very difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult. It is.
Yeah. I wanted to close with a few personal questions, and these are always some of my sort of most favourite stuff, because it gives people an insight into, and also allows us to talk outside of the company of some of the things we find most beneficial. And I wanted to start with sort of habits, in terms of personal habits, Andrew. What is anything you've picked up in the last couple of years that you think's had the greatest sort of impact in your life personally?
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because you think, what habits have you adopted in that sense? I don't think I have any habits. The only thing I would say is, probably from a personal point of view, is slow down. Yeah, slow down. There's reasons for that, and literally slow down. It's in the price of diesel, by the way. And there's only so many speeding tickets you can pick up before you go back. You better stop doing that. Just slow down. I think I'm quite a measured person anyway. Just slow down. Sometimes just slow down a little bit and not think about it, but literally take your life at a slightly slower pace.
I suppose a more overarching question, and something that's perhaps a little bit more relevant for yourself. Is there any piece of advice from your years of experience in the market now, like a piece of advice that you think people should ignore that are coming into this sector? Are there any sort of things that you hear people say or you've heard said time and time again, and from your experiences you now know that are not going to serve them long term?
I think there are things not quite like that, but I think there's, if I was giving anybody advice, don't take yourself too serious, actually.
Okay.
Be yourself as well. I think we were talking about it earlier. People are just people, regardless of who they are, what position they're in, what they get paid. Don't lie, because a lie often comes around and bites you somewhere quite severely. So my advice is don't do it. Because it will come to haunt you at a later date. If it's a slight variation of the truth, or something happened, and you can say to someone, I know I told you this, but actually this has happened and this is the result. That's absolutely fine, because it wasn't a lie. But something's happened to change what you actually said originally.
Things are changing so much.
Don't say something that's patently not true.
What about yourself, Andrew? Is there anything, certainly from your role, from a sales and from a marketing perspective, is there any piece of advice you'd give somebody from working in different companies and stuff like that? Is there any piece of advice you find would be particularly beneficial?
Yeah, I'd come back as to what Nick said earlier about that, it's not been done that for 20 years, or that's not how we did it, so it can't be done. I think it's important to look at the people within a business and listen to their experiences, but not always to accept the limitations that they put on that, and sometimes the limiting beliefs that people can have for themselves or for what's going on around them. I would say the best advice I would give to anyone in anything that they want to do in life is to listen to the advice that's being dispensed, but also to challenge any limiting beliefs that they have imposed on them, and look at it and say, well, if you can take ownership of that, if you can take ownership of the situation, can you affect the outcome? I think it's something that I've done in my life, where I've looked at different roles that I've been in, and someone said, well, this can't be done, or that can't be done, or you won't be able to do that, and gone, no, sorry, who are you to tell me that?
And who are you to tell yourself sometimes?
Exactly,
we can so easily put so many of those self-imposed barriers in front of ourselves, and they're often based on something subconscious that we learnt from somebody else. Your old boss said it, or the sector you worked in, it was impossible, or your parents or your family around you are allowing you to continue to perpetuate that belief, and you place a cap on yourselves that it's quite you're probably blind to, but it's a prison of your own creation, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's more and more now. There's younger people coming through into organisations, and I've I think they just need to look at it and run with it. And if they've got an idea, don't be scared to find the voice, to put that out there and to say, someone might have 50 years experience, but is that 50 years of experience 50 years out of date? That's the way. That's really the advice that
time and experience aren't always a direct correlation as well. Just because somebody's been in a role for 50 years, they might have been sat there doing nothing, like you say.
Exactly.
My sincere hope from our long conversation is that people do know a lot more about Rosenbauer, but in the unlikely event that this is the first time they've heard from them, probably a 5-thread question is, where can they see you guys operating out through the next year? What's the best way to get in contact with the company? If somebody would like to learn a little bit more about the products or the organisation, what's the best way for them to reach out? Or where can they see you over the next 12 months?
So, there's all the social media channels, so they can keep an eye out on exactly what we're doing, where we're up to, and what we're promoting through them. Whenever we put anything out there in terms of a product, we put the email addresses of the relevant person within the UK to contact with. So if people want to see us, they're more than welcome to come here. We'll come to them for demo, to show around. We're fairly open door here to people who want to come and see what's going on. We've got Intershuts this summer, which obviously Rosenbauer will have a big presence.
For anybody that doesn't know what that is, what is Intershuts?
It's the second biggest fire and rescue exhibition in the world after IDFC in Indianapolis. So it comes to, so traditionally for the last few years been in Hanover, at the halls in Hanover, takes over more or less the whole showground. And anybody exhibits at Intershoots, and obviously it's German based, so you get a lot of German visitors, but it's an international show and you get people come from everywhere, all over the world, come to Intershoots. Yep. It's a massive thing. It's on for 6 days. The last Saturday is generally a family day. So, because a lot of volunteer firefighters bring their families. And so, it's a real family event, But there are different halls with different things from, fire protection to disaster management to, fire. Normally there's a demonstration and there's an outside area for the people who do demonstrations and stuff. I think Rosenbauer, at the last one in 2015, they had some acrobats. Stuff and the thing, fire, flamethrowers and but all sorts, loud music. It's a bit, it's a show. It is a proper show, and if no one's ever been, this will probably be, I think, it's even my 5th or 6th one I've been to.
Also, we'll be at the ESS this year, as always. So we'll be there at the ESS. And one thing we're also doing a little bit different this year is in June. We'll be having an open day for fire chiefs, station watch managers, people within the fire service, airport, municipal or industrial, to have the opportunity to come here to see us. I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Because it's something needed to be done, and you couldn't see anybody that was particularly stepping up to do it. So this is another opportunity where Rosenbauer's kind of taken the ball by the horns and said, well, you know what, we're going to put it on, and we're going to invite everybody. There's nobody that's not.
It's one of the things I'm quite keen to do, is to sort of try and break down barriers and walls and stuff. So, create that familiarity. It's purely an opportunity to come to meet the guys in here, see what we've got, a bit of a social, bit of a networking event. But obviously,
some places are quite closed doors as well, though, because they're worried about if people are actually going to have a look behind the gates, and they'll see that it's not everything that it appears to be. There's so many people that have a great presence on social media, but if you actually visit the facility, you've allowed us to take a lot of photos here today, and I know, should I say that? Yeah, well, we've been certain places with the podcast where they're less up for us doing that, because things perhaps aren't as they might seem from the outside world.
Yeah, we've got, like Nick said, Intershuts and the ESS is obviously open to the public, so we've got fantastic outlets that way for the public to see what Rosenbauer have got to offer, but also having the facilities here allows us to do things just within the service, sort of on a professional level as well, in quite an intimate setting where they can see and that side of it. So
we'll stick all the links to those in the notes below it. I'd be remiss if I didn't just acknowledge as well, just as we close, Rosenbauer are doing their quarterly giveaway very kindly for all of our listeners with the podcast. So just as a little bit of a underline finish for us there, what is it Rosenbauer are doing with the podcast? It's great that people continue to get benefit from stuff like this.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that we've launched this year is our new Boros line of boots. So the Boros for us. B4 is our sort of flagship boot, and we're going to be working together with the podcast for doing a quarterly giveaway, like you said. So
I know every month as it turns over, some people get frustrated that they miss it with some of the other giveaways that we do. So this is an opportunity. Every quarter, people can submit via email or they can register their interest. They must follow in the Rosenbauer pages, and they must be tagging another firefighter in the post below it, but they'll be in for a chance every quarter to win. There's no crazy details. We're not going to steal your email addresses. We're not going to spam you with stuff. This is simply an opportunity for people to experience the products from Rosenbauer, in the size that they need and all that sort of jazz. So we're very appreciative of that. Thank you very much for taking 2 hours. I'm speaking for 2 hours there. Goodness, 2 hours straight off the bat out of your busy day. I know there's so many priorities and so many important things to be doing. So I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you later in the year.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers, Pete.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Cheers.
The Firefighters Podcast was created to be a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations, we celebrate those within our emergency services family and the wider sector by encouraging the support of these incredible group of people who have chosen to make their life purpose protecting their communities and the wider society. It's presented by myself, Operational UK Firefighter Pete Wakefield. So wherever you are in the world, please support your emergency services, and thank you for listening.